Chapter 279. Reeks. By the way, what do you have in mind? Everyone's interest was piqued. What ran one? As long as there was a way, no one would be willing to let their assets shrink. Wuji had a lot of ideas. Since he said he had an idea, everyone had a little bit of hope and would consider working with him. Stocking up, Wuji calmly uttered these two words. Fisk, aren't you spouting nonsense? Everyone expressed their disdain. At this point in time, everyone knew that the purchasing power of gold was decreasing. Stocking up was the best way to ensure that their assets would not be lost. However, there was a sea of equipment and materials in the game. Who knew which would rise and which would fall after the official launch? If they bought the wrong thing, it would be like the wind blowing the eggshell. Everyone knew that there were only a few items that could make money, so the chances of going bankrupt were much higher than the chances of making a fortune. A bird in the hand was better than 100 in the forest. Rather than that, they might as well keep the gold in their hands. At least they would be able to keep some of their capital in the end. Hee, I know a few items that will definitely sell well after the official launch. Wuji pretended to be profound. What are they? Wang Yu asked curiously. Wang Yu was the one who suffered the greatest loss when their assets shrank. They urgently needed a way to make up for it. Wuji had undoubtedly become Wang Yu's hope. Wuji said, Actually, I've already told you before and had Dao Xue place a purchase order. Oh, you're talking about the water of life and southern stargrass? Dao Xue asked. That's right, those are the two materials. Wuji said confidently, We'll definitely make a profit after the official launch. The reason why I'm using the guild's funds to purchase them now is because I'm afraid that you guys will lose money in the future. Oh, I see. Everyone rubbed their chins, deep in thought. How about it? Does anyone want to buy in? We'll split the profits according to the shares. Well, it's true that the prices of these two materials will increase, but they aren't that rare. Everyone was still a little uncertain. Water of life and southern stargrass were the basic materials needed to concoct potions. Regardless of whether it was an advanced or basic potion, these two materials were required to concoct potions. Although the price of these two materials might increase, they were not rare items. Unless those professional players deliberately raised the price, there would not be much room for improvement. It will definitely increase by a large margin. You guys have to believe me. Wuji squinted his eyes, looking completely like he was fooling them. Everyone felt a chill down their spines. To place one's pride, he said uneasily, I say, Wuji, you're not thinking of taking the opportunity to illegally raise funds to scam us and then run away, are you? Do I think he's the kind of person who likes to trick people? Wuji was furious. Everyone cast sidelong glances at Wuji and smiled without saying a word. Wuji said helplessly, I never cheat my friends. If you don't believe me, I'll return your money to you. Don't say that I didn't bring you along when I got rich. As he spoke, Wuji took out a bunch of money bags. The atmosphere in the meeting hall suddenly became awkward. Everyone frowned and did not know what to do. I believe you. While the others were still considering, a clear voice suddenly broke the silence. Everyone did not need to raise their heads to know that it was Yang Na, because Yang Na was the only female among the 10 people. Did you see that? Your courage is not even comparable to a lady. Wuji looked at Yang Na with admiration and said disdainfully. Yang Na said, I just can't stand this awkward atmosphere. Don't think too much about it. No matter what, Wuji had good intentions. Yang Na was the daughter of a rich family, and she did not lack that bit of money. Wuji, I believe you too. Just as Yang Na expressed her stance, Ming Jian Dao Xue also stood up. Oh, Dao Xue, you also think that these two materials will increase in price? Wang Yu asked Ming Jian Dao Xue. Ming Jian Dao Xue was a professional businessman. As long as he felt that the price of something would increase, it would definitely increase. He was much more professional than Wuji. Ming Jian Dao Xue said, I really can't predict whether the price will increase or not. But when I was buying these two materials, I saw that the sock puppet of Xiaobing Studio was also buying them. Oh, so that's how it is. Wuji, I have 2,000 gold coins here. Consider it a stake. Chun Xiang was the third to stand up. He took out 2 big bags of money and threw them to Wuji. To place one's pride exclaimed, Damn, Brother Chun, you bet so much. It's just a bet. Do you want to follow? Chun Xiang said with a smile. Of course I want to follow. Wuji, this is my 1,000 gold coins. To place one's pride casually threw out a big bag of money. To place one's pride was not doing well in Xuanzhen. 1,000 gold coins was already his limit. The reason why he dared to follow was because he believed in Chun Xiang's intuition. Chun Xiang was always waiting for an opportunity to make a move. His moves were accurate and ruthless. To place one's pride had never seen him lose a bet. To place one's pride threw out all his assets. The others were also tempted. After all, Wuji had led them to make a lot of money. Even if they could not make a profit this time, these materials were important. At least they would not lose too much. We will follow too. In Lao Air and Baiming Yu also took out their money bags. Anyway, their assets would shrink no matter what, so they might as well take a gamble. In the end, only Wang Yu did not say anything. Old cow, you don't believe me? It's not that I don't believe you. I still have 10,000 gold coins in the consignment shop. Do you think I should still follow? Wang Yu asked. Wuji said, you don't have to follow. Take out the money and give half of it to Dao Xue to collect the materials. Give a rest to your wife to use in the grocery store. If you have enough money, you can ask your wife to buy these two materials. Why not? Wang Yu asked curiously. Because we can't put all our eggs in one basket. Wuji said. After discussing how to make a fortune in the meeting hall, everyone finished today's dungeon. Wang Yu went offline. After taking off his helmet, Wang Yu saw Mu Zixian sitting at the desk. She was browsing the forum on her computer. Her expression was very ugly. What's wrong, wife? Wang Yu asked with concern. Mu Zixian said angrily. Didn't you see the forum? Someone is maliciously slandering you. I guess it must be Xiaobing's studio. I know, Wang Yu said with a smile. Then why are you acting like nothing happened? How dare you play dirty with us? From tomorrow onwards, we won't sell our things to them. Mu Zixian said angrily. Wang Yu patted Mu Zixian's shoulder and said, Don't forget, they are from the studio. They must have many sock puppets. If they hide their identities and buy things, you won't be able to tell who they are, right? Then what should we do? Mu Zixian asked unhappily. Their main target is the potions. So we can stock up a large portion of the potions and only sell a small portion. Then we can increase the price. Wang Yu told Mu Zixian the method that Wuji taught him. Yes, that's a good idea. But what about our grocery store? We don't have that much cash flow. Mu Zixian said worriedly. Intermediate potions were not cheap. If they stored such precious potions in the warehouse, they would eventually run out of cash flow. Chapter 280. Reeks. After returning to the game the next day, Wang Yu and Mu Zixian made arrangements for the shop before heading to the Light Monastery's church. Wang Yu came to the church to complete a quest. After all, no matter how bad the financial situation was in the game, the rewards from completing quests would never depreciate. When players reached level 25, they would receive a main quest called Choice. It was a quest to choose between the light or dark faction. Wang Yu had come into contact with a faction system not long ago and knew that there would be a faction buff after joining a faction. He could also use faction contribution to exchange for a lot of good stuff. However, due to his relationship with Xuanzhen's group of friends, Wang Yu gave up on the dark faction's invitation and decided to join the light faction. Most players in the game had already chosen their faction before entering the game. After all, there were light and dark factions in the game. Players who played the light faction would follow a group of like-minded friends to develop in the light faction's main city as soon as they left the beginner's village. Although Yuhuicheng was a neutral main city, it only meant that battles between factions were not allowed in this area. Nominally, Yuhuicheng was still under the jurisdiction of the light faction. Therefore, most players in Yuhuicheng would naturally choose the light faction. Of course, players could also choose to give up on the faction. This way, they would become free people. Although they would not be hated by either faction, neither faction would like free people. Most importantly, without the faction buff and faction benefits, the player's strength would fall behind by a huge margin. Players in the game were very realistic. Apart from the brainless ones, no player would choose to give up on these things and become free people without any benefits. The monastery's church was the respawn point for the clerics and knights. It was currently morning, so there were a lot of players online. When Wang Yu arrived at the church according to the quest instructions, the church was filled with players who had just come online. Wang Yu followed the system notification and arrived in front of the red-robed sect leader, Shui-en, who was in charge of choosing factions. When Shui-en saw Wang Yu, he said with a kind expression, "You're here, my child." "Yes, I've encountered a choice on the path of cultivation." Wang Yu recited his lines. "I know you've encountered a cultivation bottleneck. I hope the light god can guide you." "Praise the light god," Wang Yu said expressionlessly. At the same time, he thought to himself, if the light faction has to say such disgusting things in the future, I would rather be a free man. Since we are both children of God, then please remove your veil. Let God's holy light wash away your sins, said Xuan. Wang Yu's reputation with the light faction was in the negative over 200 points. Therefore, when he entered the church, Wang Yu deliberately put on a mask. Wang Yu was stunned and asked carefully, "Is God really willing to forgive me?" It would be best if he joined the light faction, which did not require any reputation points. However, he was afraid that the divine light god would hold a grudge. After playing the game for so long and meeting so many NPCs, Wang Yu did not doubt the divine light god's darkness divinity. There were only 2 NPC guards inside the church. However, Wang Yu was not particularly afraid of them. The main problem was that there were so many players in the hall. On the off chance that the shameless system issued a quest to kill her, she would have to waste a lot of effort to escape. Don't worry, my child. You are just a lost lamb who cannot distinguish right from wrong. The past is the past. If the great divine light God can forgive the devil, why would he not forgive you? Xuan, this old fellow, was indeed a professional marketer and preacher. His glib tongue was really good. He had already started to brainwash Wang Yu. All right, Wang Yu was only concerned about whether his faction reputation would be affected. At this moment, after listening to Xuan's extravagant words, he could only express one thing. God loved the world and was willing to forgive all sinners. Wang Yu relaxed. In Wang Yu's eyes, although he had more than 200 reputation points in the light faction, he was not a completely bad person. The divine light god could even forgive the devil, so it should not be a problem for him to be forgiven. Thinking up to this point, Wang Yu took off his mask. The moment the veil was taken off, the atmosphere in the church changed. The system's holographic simulation was not just for show. The oppressive atmosphere made all the players feel that something was wrong. They all looked at Wang Yu. The cardinal was stunned for a full 10 seconds. Then, she pointed at Wang Yu and shouted, "You demon! How dare you cause trouble in the Holy Land? Men, take him down." Before she finished speaking, Xuan waved the scepter in his hand. A vast holy light condensed above Wang Yu. As the cardinal, Xuan's level was not low. No matter how weak a priest's attack power was, he was still a level deity. Instantly killing a level 30 Grandmaster of Combat was a piece of cake. Damn, he lied to me. The holy light that Xuan had condensed was actually quite shocking. Wang Yu knew that Xuan's move was powerful. Before Xuan's holy light could descend from the sky, Wang Yu cursed and activated Dusk Jump, hiding far away. The safe zone was ineffective against NPCs. The instant Wang Yu dashed out of the safe zone, Xuan's holy light descended upon the 2 guardian knights beside Wang Yu, instantly reducing them to dust. Crap, what's going on? The players inside the church were dumbfounded. Although they did not know what was going on, they knew that something special must have happened for the benevolent old man, Xuan, to suddenly attack someone for no reason. A special event represented a special quest. At the same time, it also represented a lot of benefits. As expected, after Xuan's holy light descended, all the players in the church received a quest. Slay the evil invader. Rewarded 200 light faction honor points and the title of Holy Warrior. 200 honor points? Damn, just how many sins did this kid commit? The light faction actually gave him such a generous reward. While everyone was shocked, they turned to look at Wang Yu and took out their weapons, preparing to attack. Within the safe zone, the quest targets were not protected. However, Wang Yu's attention was not on the players. At this moment, the two light guards of the church had already rushed over. The light guards were heaven-defying existences. Wang Yu did not dare to be careless. Not only did Wang Yu not dare to be careless, but the players in the revival point also opened up a path when they saw the light guards attacking. What a joke! These brainless fellows did not know the meaning of mercy. If one was touched by them, 10 experience points would be gone. For the light and justice, the two guards swung the spears in their hands, lowered their heads, and charged toward Wang Yu. Wang Yu held his breath and concentrated. Just as the guards were about to collide with him, Wang Yu used the long rod in his hand to support himself. His whole body leaped up 3 to 4 meters high. In midair, Wang Yu used burst fist and charged towards the entrance of the cathedral. Chapter 281. F***CK. This Grandmaster combat is so scary. Seeing Wang Yu leap over one of the guards, the players inside the church were shocked and could not help but shout in surprise. The strength of the guards was obvious to all the players. To be able to escape from their attacks, this Grandmaster of Combat must be very powerful. A powerful Grandmaster of Combat. Could this person be Iron Ox? Seeing that Wang Yu was able to dodge the guard attacks, everyone guessed Wang Yu's identity. Yu Huicheng had many Grandmasters of Combat, but there was only one with such skills, and that was the legendary god Iron Ox. This is too exciting. Realizing that their opponent was the legendary #1 expert, all the players in the cathedral shouted excitedly. Ordinary players had not personally witnessed Wang Yu's strength, so they could not imagine how powerful Wang Yu was. After all, this was a game. No matter how strong a player was, there was still a limit to their attributes. Therefore, they did not feel afraid of the #1 expert in front of them. On the contrary, they were a little excited. It was a game, after all. Most people were still relatively confident in their own strength. In the game of reincarnation, leveling was very slow, and everyone was around level 20. How much difference could there be in their attributes? If anyone could defeat the legendary #1 expert at this moment, that person would be slaying a god. Slaying a god, what a great word. Just thinking about it made people extremely excited. Moreover, there were now 2 powerful guards helping him. The difficulty of slaying a god was not just a little bit lower. It should be known that the guards had no natural enemies in the game. Thinking up to this point, the eyes of all the players in the cathedral fell on Wang Yu. Feeling the murderous intent coming from all directions, Wang Yu's body trembled. Damn it! What will come will come. As Wang Yu expected, just as Wang Yu was about to land on the ground, circles suddenly appeared on the floor of the cathedral. These circles were one after another, covering the entire floor without the slightest gap. Naturally, Wang Yu recognized that these were the prerequisites for Dark Barrier. This was also the reason why Wang Yu felt that these players were troublesome to deal with. Although the players in the cathedral were either support classes, control classes, or tank classes with low attack power, these guys' control skills were each more disgusting than the other. The Knight's charge could send the target flying. The Light Priest's Holy Flame could silence the target, and the Dark Warlock's Twisted Barrier could freeze the target. Any one of these 3 skills could make Wang Yu fall. At this moment, there were as many as 70 to 80 players in the cathedral. Unless Wang Yu could fly, even if Wang Yu had extraordinary skills, he would still die if he was controlled. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu's body spun in midair. His body went from a vertical glide to a sideways flight. At the same time, Wang Yu released the chi wave from his palm. Wang Yu flew horizontally to the side of the pillar in the cathedral under the watchful eyes of everyone. Then, Wang Yu stretched out his hand to grab the pillar. With a few swings, he carried the pillar and climbed to a higher place. At this moment, Wang Yu's dusk jump finished its cooldown. Wang Yu released his hands and was about to teleport to the door when a white flame slowly floated to Wang Yu's back. Immediately after, an ellipsis appeared above Wang Yu's head. Dusk Jump failed to activate, and Wang Yu nearly fell from the sky. F***CK. I was silenced. Wang Yu panicked and grabbed the pillar to prevent himself from falling to his death. Otherwise, it would have been too embarrassing. Damn, they actually tricked me. Could it be Wuji? Wang Yu's current position was definitely outside of the priest's attack range, but a ball of holy flame still hit Wang Yu. It was obvious that the holy flame had been thrown while Wang Yu was climbing up. Holy flame wasn't fast, but it was a directional skill. It could track its target, so even though it was outside its attack range, it still hit Wang Yu. In the online gaming circle, there weren't many expert priests. Other than Wuji, Wang Yu couldn't think of a second priest who could lock on a Wang Yu while he was jumping and almost tricked Wang Yu to death. Of course, with Wang Yu's level of novice, he probably hadn't seen many priests before. Wang Yu immediately turned his head to look at the people behind him. After looking around, he didn't find any traces of Wuji. So Wang Yu flipped open the battle log, and it was written, "Rolling Mario has attacked you. As you are in a special quest, you cannot defend yourself." Rolling Mario, Wang Yu turned around and found a wretched-looking priest at his feet, looking at him proudly. Keep running." Mario, who was rolling on the ground, waved the staff in his hand and raised his head. "Just surrender, Brother Iron Bull. We have already sealed the entrance. You can't run." Wang Yu looked at the door. As expected, while he was in a panic, the door of the church had already closed. There were a few warlocks in green hats standing at the door's opening and closing mechanism. As long as he went over, he would definitely be controlled to death. If I wanted to leave, do you think you can catch me?" Wang Yu asked Rolling Mario with a smile. Do you really think that we are just decorations? If you don't believe me, you can come down and try." Mario, who was rolling on the ground, said with a smile. His cheeky expression made Wang Yu think of Wuji. Wuji was also like this when he was scheming against others. "I'll give it a try." Wang Yu released her hands and leaped up, landing on top of the Rolling Mario's head. The Rolling Mario smiled sinisterly and took 2 steps back. A dark boundary appeared out of thin air where she had just been standing. "Hey!" Wang Yu couldn't help but be surprised. A priest was a seemingly holy profession. How could there be such a scum with a belly full of evil tricks? This Rolling Mario was definitely not any less sinister than Wuji. However, although this kid was sinister, he had underestimated Wang Yu. If he wanted to trap Wang Yu, how could a dark boundary be enough? Wang Yu smiled slightly. He moved his right palm to the side and sent out a chi wave. He forcefully deviated his trajectory and fell to the side. Mario, who was rolling, snapped his fingers and said, "Plan B." Upon receiving Rolling Mario's order, the priests at the side all used Light's sacred flame to silence Wang Yu. Then, the warlock's dark boundary appeared beneath Wang Yu's feet once again. The Light's sacred flame silence effect was 6 seconds and could be stacked 10 times. The silence effect on Wang Yu's body was stacked for 60 seconds. Moreover, the dark boundary's range was 500 yards. If Wang Yu didn't use any skills, definitely wouldn't be able to escape the dark boundary's range. Seeing that Wang Yu had been hit, Mario, who had been rolling on the ground, laughed proudly and said, What #1 expert? He's just a brute with no brains. Thank you, Brother Ox, for giving me honor points. Goodbye. For the sake of justice, I will represent the holy light to destroy you." However, just as Mario, who was rolling on the ground, thought that Wang Yu was definitely going to die, there was a sudden shout that caused Mario's heart to turn cold. Chapter 282. Damn it, I forgot about these 2 idiots. Hearing the voices of the 2 guards, Mario shouted gloomily. At the same time, he hurriedly retreated. Wang Yu was still in the air, but the darkness barrier had already risen. At this moment, the 2 guards had already arrived below Wang Yu. The guard were existences that surpassed level 200 and could slay gods and demons. A mere darkness barrier was as fragile as an eggshell in front of these 2 guards. With just one stomp, the dark barrier beneath Wang Yu's body was shattered. There was nothing wrong with it. The difference in levels was too great. The attack priority of the guards far surpassed the players, and crowd control skills were completely useless. In the air, Wang Yu smiled. The gloves in his hands transformed into a long staff, and he tapped the head of one of the guards. Just now, Wang Yu had been high up. When he saw the guards rushing over, he had jumped down. Everything was within Wang Yu's grasp. At this moment, the guards were jogging over. They did not use any skills, so this attack on Wang Yu could not be considered as an attack. Borrowing the force of the guard's impact, Wang Yu flew back once more. The silence on Wang Yu's head still had over 50 seconds left. He could not use any skills. If he wanted to escape from the guards, he would have to find another way. In the next moment, Wang Yu used quick recover to stabilize his body in the air and lightly landed on the head of one of the players. The guards only had Wang Yu in their eyes. They did not care about who was beneath Wang Yu's feet. Seeing Wang Yu in front of them, the two guards raised their spears and stabbed at the player beneath Wang Yu's feet, turning them into flying ash. At the same time, Wang Yu hurriedly leaped up and landed on the head of another player. The guards turned around and continued to follow. Immediately after, another player was slaughtered. Left with no choice, Wang Yu could only step on the heads of the players and run out. The guards followed behind. Wherever Wang Yu passed, there would be white light, and wherever the guards went, not even a blade of grass would grow. The church was the resurrection point for the players. Some unlucky ones were even stabbed to death as soon as they resurrected. The level of misery was clear to see. Wang Yu's act of bringing a knife to kill people was too arrogant. Unfortunately, the players were as weak as grass in front of the guards. This scene shocked the players in the church, causing them to scatter in all directions. Rolling Mario had retreated to a safe area when Wang Yu escaped the trap. At this moment, he saw the players dying and reviving in the resurrection point, and his face became extremely pale. Rolling Mario originally thought that a few dozen people against a grandmaster of combat like Wang Yu was already thinking highly of Wang Yu. Who knew that this fellow was even more powerful than the rumors said? Grandmasters of combat were the same as mages. They were both professions that relied more on skills. However, this fellow named Iron Ox, in a situation where he could not use any skills, not only had he escaped from danger, but he had also completed a counterattack. This had completely toppled Mario's worldview. The rolling Mario could not understand techniques like leveraging force and quick recover in the air. However, he was still an expert. Of course, he could see that Wang Yu's operating skills and level were far beyond the common understanding of the Grandmaster profession. This fellow is too strange. Could it be that this is how the Grandmaster of Combat plays? Rolling Mario's thoughts were in a mess. Hee, so you were hiding here. Just as Mario, who was rolling on the ground, was in a daze, he suddenly heard a laugh. Mario raised his head and saw Wang Yu running over the guards' heads, stepping on everyone's heads as she ran towards him. The two guards turned around, raised the spears in their hands, lowered their heads, and charged, once again bringing with them a flash of light. Rolling Mario turned pale with fright when he saw this. He immediately turned around and ran, shouting as he ran, "Brother Iron Ox, I actually admire you a lot. Admire your sister. Do you know that you almost killed me?" Mario's words might be able to fool others, but Wang Yu had been in Xuanzhen before. How could he be fooled so easily? Rolling Mario was only a cleric with short legs. If he ran, Wang Yu could easily leave him in the dust. Before Rolling Mario could run far, Wang Yu had already caught up to him. At this moment, the guards were only 5 meters away from Wang Yu. Wang Yu leaped and landed in front of Mario, who was rolling on the ground. Rolling Mario cried out in alarm, "Nyo go Uncle Nyo, F***CK me." Wang Yu ignored Mario's pleas for mercy. He grabbed Mario's shoulder with one hand and kicked Mario's knee with the other. Mario screamed in pain as he fell head first onto his feet. At the same time, Wang Yu extended his other hand and grabbed one of Mario's legs. Instead of retreating, he dragged the rolling Mario towards the guards who were rushing over with their spears. When the guards arrived, Wang Yu grabbed Mario's hand and flung him away. Then he moved to the side and dodged behind the two guards. Wang Yu had dodged, but Mario was in a miserable state. Because Wang Yu's action of grabbing Mario was too ambiguous, when Mario was flung away, he was left wide open and was stabbed between the legs by the two guards. As everyone knew, there was a popular singer who sang a song a few decades ago. There was a line in the song, "Chrysanthemums are broken, the ground is full of wounds." All the players who saw Mario's miserable state had ashen expressions and were silent. When they looked at Wang Yu again, Their gazes were filled with fear. The resurrected Mario had a gloomy expression. He squatted in the corner with a bitter expression. At this time, Wang Yu's silence effect had ended. Wang Yu, who was using the tiger's might to intimidate others, finally intimidated all the players. They all opened up a path for Wang Yu. Wang Yu's burst punch was followed by flash, pole vault, and telekinesis wave bounced in the air. With a combination of skills, he shook off the guards behind him and directly jumped through the crowd to the entrance of the church. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he opened the door of the church and left, leaving behind a group of devastated players and 2 guards who acted as if nothing had happened. Looking at the 2 dumb guards, the players in the church complained incessantly, but there was nothing they could do. The 2 of them didn't have much intelligence. They definitely wouldn't understand if you scolded them. As for beating them up, well, unless you were tired of living. Wang Yu, who had escaped, was extremely depressed. No one could be happy that they had shamelessly applied to join the faction, only to be almost beaten up after being shut up. As for the dark faction, Wang Yu couldn't bring himself to apply to join them no matter what. As the saying goes, a good horse doesn't eat the grass of the past. The boss of the dark faction had begged Wang Yu to join them, but Wang Yu had flatly rejected him. If he were to apply to the underlings of the dark faction now, wouldn't that be too shameless? Moreover, joining the dark faction meant breaking off relations with the people of Chuanjin. Just because of this, Wang Yu wouldn't join the dark faction. Damn it, am I going to be abandoned by the world just like this? Wang Yu shouted gloomily. He had just been muttering that those who chose to be free were idiots. In the blink of an eye, he had been forced to become a free man. This was really bad karma. P.S. Chapter 284. My daughter recited a poem to me today. 480 temples in the Southern Dynasty. I said 485 in the Southern Dynasty, and then she was stunned. Chapter 283. After escaping from the church, Wang Yu quickly left the area around the church. Carrying over 200 honor points to the Radiant Church was an arrogant act. Considering the Radiant Church's narrow-mindedness, Wang Yu's honor points must have dropped by quite a bit. It was not safe to roam around the church. As Wang Yu escaped from the church, he thought to himself, since the Light faction despised his low honor points, he would need to complete some quests that would increase his reputation points in the Light faction if he wanted to join the Light faction. However, according to the system settings, if Wang Yu wanted to regain the Light faction's recognition, he would need to raise his favorability with the Light faction to above disgust. The lowest disgust value was 100. In addition to losing 200 honor points from killing the angel, Wang Yu had also lost over 200 honor points from killing the commander. Later, when Wang Yu rejected the Dark faction's invitation, he had gained another 100 honor points from the Light faction. After returning to Yu Huicheng, Wang Yu had to complete a few more quests to raise his honor points to around 200. Now that Wang Yu had caused a ruckus in the church, his reputation points in the Light faction must have dropped below 300. If he wanted to raise his favorability to disgust, he would need to accumulate over 200 honor points. Over 200 reputation points. Faction reputation points were extremely difficult to obtain. Quests only gave a few points. If Shifeng were to accumulate reputation points bit by bit, how long would it take? If he wanted to earn reputation points quickly, he needed to find a high-ranking NPC. Otherwise, how could ordinary NPCs afford to spend so much money? In Yu Huicheng, there were only 3 high-level NPCs that Wang Yu was familiar with: the City Lord, the God of Crafts Simba, and Hermit. As the representative of the neutral faction, the City Lord must have a close relationship with the church. Otherwise, it would be illogical for City Lord Yu Huicheng to be classified as a neutral faction member, since Yu Huicheng was a believer of the Radiant God. Craftsman God Simba was a dirty dwarf, completely incompatible with the holiness of the God of Light. Moreover, it was said that dwarves believed in the God of War, so the dwarves were considered heretics in the eyes of the Holy Light Court. Simba must have been persecuted a lot when he was young. According to Wang Yu's estimation, Simba did not have any quests that would increase the Light faction's honor points. However, there would definitely be a lot of quests that would decrease the Light faction's honor points. With the system's integrity, It was not impossible for Simba to lie to the players and say that smashing the Divine Light statue would increase the Light faction's honor points. After much thought, Wang Yu's only option was Hermit. Although Hermit didn't look like a follower of the God of Light, his faith wasn't as obvious as the Castellans and Simba's. Therefore, among the three of them, Hermit had the highest chance of increasing the Light faction's honor points. Wang Yu pondered as he strolled to Hermit's turf. After waking Hermit up the old way, Hermit said sleepily, "It's you again." "It's me." Wang Yu smiled as he took out a few bottles of wine and placed them in front of Hermit. "This is for you." Seeing this, Hermit raised an eyebrow and said with a serious expression, "Humph, if you're unaccountably solicitous, then you're hiding something. TSK, if you don't want it, then I'll take it." Wang Yu curled his lips and pretended to keep the wine. Hermit quickly stopped Wang Yu's hand and said, "But I like young people like you. If you have something to say, just say it." "I want a quest." Wang Yu went straight to the point. Hermit let out a sigh of relief and said, "Oh, so that's it. You scared me. Recently, I suspect that the Sunset Temple is the mastermind behind the Darkness Descent. Bring a few friends and go investigate. System notification. You have received the main quest, the Temple of the Past. Clear Sunset Temple 01 at any difficulty level. System notification. The quest is difficult. Please form a party. Quest background. When Yu Huicheng first built the city, there was once a Twilight sect. For some reason, the followers of the Twilight sect suddenly left their city and built the Twilight Temple in a remote place. After the Darkness Descent, the Twilight sect disappeared, leaving only the Sunset Temple. Main quest. Seeing the quest that Hermit gave him, Wang Yu was speechless. Damn it, the main quest is a quest that must be completed. It can be triggered as long as your level is high enough. I've spent so much money to buy wine for this old man, and this old man is trying to fool me with the main quest. What the hell are you playing dumb for? You know that's not what I want, Wang Yu said angrily. Then what quest do you want? Hermit asked, puzzled. Wang Yu said, a quest that adds Light faction honor points at least 200 points. I don't have that, Hermit said, shaking his head. Wang Yu took out a few more bottles of wine and said, "Is this enough for this time?" Hermit put away the wine and said awkwardly, "I really don't have such a quest. If you want a quest that adds Light faction honor points, go to the Pope. What's the use of me? I'm not from the Luminous Vatican. F***CK. If I could convince that bastard, I wouldn't need to spend money to beg you," Wang Yu said gloomily. "That's true," Hermit muttered. "Why are you in such a hurry for Light faction honor points?" "To join the Light faction," Wang Yu said. Hermit said, "Oh, I see. Can't you join another faction? Why do you have to join the Light faction?" "I can't join the Dark faction. My friends are all here." Hermit said, "Of course you can't join the Dark faction. If you do, I'll be the first one to come after you." F***CK, are you serious? Wang Yu was shocked. Of course it's true. Yu Huicheng's Darkness Descent was caused by those guys. As my disciple, if you join the Dark faction, I'll have to deal with them. At that time, I'll have to take back your class and equipment, Hermit said. Meow. Wang Yu broke out in a cold sweat. Luckily, he hadn't been bewitched by that devil, Edwin, and joined the Dark faction. Otherwise, he would have been slaughtered by the Hermit by now. This lousy game really was full of traps. If he wasn't careful, he could die without a grave. Then what do I do now? I can't join the Dark faction, and the Light faction doesn't want me either. Am I supposed to be a free person? Wang Yu asked gloomily. A free person's starting point was much lower than a faction player's. Wang Yu didn't want to be a free person. That's not necessary, Hermit said with a smile. I can give you a hidden quest for 10 gold coins. I knew you had a way. Wang Yu was delighted. He took out 10 gold coins from his pocket and handed them to Hermit. Hermit took the coins and smiled. You only know about the Light faction and Dark faction. Have you never heard of a neutral faction? System notification. You have activated a hidden quest. Recognition of the strong. Quest rank S. Do you wish to accept? Chapter 284. Accept system notification. You have accepted the hidden quest, the Strong's Recognition. Quest rank S. You may now join the hidden faction neutral faction. It's just a faction quest, but it's S rank. Wang Yu asked in surprise. Although Wang Yu was a little pale, she had played the game for a while. Naturally, she knew that the faction mission was actually the same as the main mission. It was a mission that had to be done, and the commonality of the must-do missions was that they were relatively simple. However, Hermit's quest was S rank. Wang Yu could not understand it. Hermit said calmly, "To survive in this chaotic world, you have to choose a side. Other than those who are useless, you have to be strong enough to avoid being harassed by others." That makes sense. But what should I do to gain their recognition? Wang Yu continued to ask. The neutral faction is not a group. It represents an attitude of standing aloof from worldly affairs. If you want to gain recognition, you must first gain the recognition of one of the three major neutral races. What are the three major neutral races? Titans, dragons, and elves. Hermit said calmly. Only these three races can stand aloof from worldly affairs and not be affected by wars. In the background story of his rebirth, the Titan race created this world. The Titan race's own bloodline was God, and the light god, demons, and so on were all their descendants. The elves believed in nature, while the dragons believed in their own power. These three races were powerful and aloof from worldly affairs. No one in the light or dark faction dared to provoke them. Can I give up on this quest? Wang Yu asked, sweating profusely. Although Wang Yu had never come into contact with the elves, he had come into contact with the dragons and titans. The strength of these two races was still fresh in Wang Yu's mind. They were both level 200 existences. Just a level 35 dragonoid hybrid, the Dragonblood Spear God, was already strong enough to massacre an entire city, not to mention those level 200 bosses. Of course you can, but if you don't join the faction, you'll be a free person. You can't proceed with the main quest, and the gold won't be refunded, Hermit said with a smile. Wang Yu, I have 3 tokens here. You can choose one to accept their trial. As he spoke, Hermit took out a hammer, a gem, and a leaf. I choose the elves. Wang Yu pointed at the leaf without hesitation. Wang Yu had fought against Arceus before, and the big guy was not convinced of his loss. It was very likely that he would make things difficult for Wang Yu. As for the dragons, Wang Yu had the title of Dragon Slayer, and the dragon's honor rating was -50. It would be good if the dragons did not eat Wang Yu as a midnight snack, so the elves are the first choice. Thinking of this, Wang Yu couldn't help but sigh at his tragic fate. F***CK. I'm not a vicious person. Why do I have enemies all over the world, and each one is more vicious than the other? Hermit handed the leaf to Wang Yu and said slowly, the elves are in the Elven City. I hope you can get their approval. As a neutral city, the Elven City was in the same area as Yuhuicheng. Wang Yu stepped on the teleportation circle, and in a flash he arrived at the Elven City. Although the Elven City was called a city, it was actually a huge ancient tree. All of the Elven City's residents and players lived on this tree. The leveling area outside the Elven City was also full of forests. Due to the influence of the main city's culture, most of the players in the Elven City were archers and thieves. From the game's background, Wang Yu understood that the elves were actually not weaker than the dragons and titans, and they were not easy to deal with. In the background, the elves and dragons were the first races created by the creator. Dragons were lazy and tyrannical, while the elves were docile and hardworking. However, it was such a docile race that almost destroyed the entire world. Because the elves used magic recklessly in Wuji, the magical elements in this world became scarce. In the end, the Nephilim race broke the barrier between hell and the human world and took advantage of the gap to launch the descent of darkness. The elves also fell apart because of this, and at this moment, only one of them was in the Elven City. Of course, this was all in the past. The current elves were not as conservative and extremely xenophobic as the legend said. After Wang Yu arrived at the Elven City and handed Hermit's token to the Elven Patriarch Alice, Alice said politely to Wang Yu, "So you're a disciple of Lord Hermit. If you want to prove yourself, go to the Fairy Trail Forest and retrieve the King of Rock Giant's heart." After that, Alice ignored Wang Yu as expected of a cold queen. Wang Yu, who had received the Alice's trial quest, suddenly felt that this quest was not as difficult as she had imagined. Wang Yu had originally wanted to solo the Elven race's expert NPC or something. Who would have thought that she would have to kill a boss with a lousy name? However, when Wang Yu left the Elven city, he immediately understood why this quest was S rank. Damn, outside this broken city was a huge forest, and there were groups of players leveling up in the forest. After entering the forest, the map coordinates strangely disappeared, and the system notification said, "You have discovered the cursed forest, obtained 1,000 EXP. At first, when he followed behind other players, Wang Yu still knew where the road was. However, after walking for about half an hour, as the monsters around Wang Yu grew stronger, the number of players decreased, and in the end, Wang Yu simply lost his way. The sea of trees was vast, and it was fine if there were no players, but there were no coordinates. Wang Yu was like a headless fly, completely lost. F***CK. Who designed this stupid map? Are you trying to kill me? Wang Yu cursed gloomily. If this was in real life, Wang Yu could still use his common sense to determine the direction. However, in the game, there were many things that even science could not explain, so common sense was useless. Now, the only way was to kill himself and return to the city, then re-enter the cursed forest. However, Wang Yu could not kill himself. It was not that he was unwilling to give up the little bit of EXP, but this was a hidden quest. God knows if the EXP would drop upon death. Before he had 100% confidence, Wang Yu did not dare to take the risk. What should I do? What should I do? Wang Yu was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. He wanted to ask Chuanjin for help, but after thinking about it, Chuanjin had never been to this stupid place before. Even if he asked, it would be useless, and he would become a laughingstock for those people. So he gave up. Just when Wang Yu was at his wit's end, suddenly, a voice reached Wang Yu's ears. "Brother, do you think that the boss has been discovered by others?" "No, the location of the map is very hidden, and I only found it by chance. If I did not have a special item that could record the coordinates, I reckon that even I would not have found it." Chapter 285. Reeks. Wang Yu had been practicing martial arts for many years, and his instincts were very sensitive. He quickly determined the direction of the sound and excitedly moved closer. After walking for about 10 meters, Wang Yu vaguely saw a team not far away, walking in his direction. These people seemed to be in a hurry, avoiding the monsters on the side of the road if they could, and focusing fire on those that they could not, without the slightest hesitation. Wang Yu had been wandering around here for a long time, and knew that the monsters here were all around level 30 hook-tailed scorpions with high attack and defense. The average player at the moment was only level 20, and this team could clear the path so cleanly they were obviously not weak. "Bro, why do I feel like someone is following us?" A girl in purple clothes in the team muttered to the big guy beside her. The big guy turned around and said, "Nonsense, this is a level 30 monster area. Other than us, who would dare to wander around here? You have to know." "Hey, how are you guys?" F***CK. Before the big guy could finish, Wang Yu jumped out from the side, scaring the whole team into taking a step back. "Who are you?" This team was ultimately a team of experts, and after seeing that it was only one person and a grandmaster of combat, they quickly calmed down and aimed the bow in their hands at Wang Yu. Wang Yu only wanted to ask for directions. He did not expect the opposite party to have such a big reaction, and could not help but be speechless. "I'm an outsider. I came here to do a quest and got lost," Wang Yu said honestly. The big guy leading the outsider team looked up and down at Wang Yu and muttered, "I've never seen you before." The Elven city was not as big as Yuhuicheng, and all the players here lived on the same tree. The tens of thousands of people here had almost all seen each other, and the Grandmaster of Combat class was relatively rare, so the big guy could still recognize a new face suddenly appearing out of nowhere. "What are you doing here?" the big guy asked cautiously. "Doing a quest." Wang Yu said, "Can you guys bring me to the Fairy Trail Forest?" What kind of place is the Immortal Trail Forest? Everyone in the party was confused. They had been in the Elven city for so long, but they had never heard of such a place. I don't know either. Wang Yu felt gloomy. This is your territory. Who am I supposed to ask? But the Elf Queen is really deceitful. She actually did something like this. By the way, can you bring me out of the city? Wang Yu pleaded. Wang Yu was really afraid. Nature was just so magical. Even if you had unparalleled martial arts, you still couldn't use your skills if you were lost. Seeing Wang Yu in this state, everyone looked at him with pity. At the same time, there were also expressions of understanding. It seemed that the natives of the Elven City, had quite a few lost their way here. All right. The purple-clothed girl's heart softened, and she was just about to agree when the large man directly refused. No, we also have a mission. Old bro, how can you get lost like this? This kind of thing is very scary, her little girl argued. If I say no, then no. Have you forgotten what we are going to do? The large man said fiercely. Wang Yu said, Bro, don't be like this. If you have a mission, I can follow you and wait for you to finish it. Then we can go back to the city together. Maybe I can even be of some help. Compared to being trapped in the forest, Wang Yu would rather follow others on a mission. After all, he was stuck in this godforsaken place with nothing but monsters. Wang Yu had enough of it. As for helping, Wang Yu was still very confident in his own strength. The large man hesitated for a moment, then said, There's no need for help. We don't want anyone to follow us on our mission. The large man's stubbornness caused Wang Yu to be dumbfounded. Was he really going to commit suicide and go back? At this moment, the purple-clothed girl said, Old bro, have you forgotten our Elven City's rules? You'll be looked down upon if you do this. Let me tell you. Yes, that's right. The other members of the team all agreed. The large man's face immediately turned red. The Elven City was a very special main city. When the players had just arrived at the Elven City, everyone got lost and were forced to commit suicide to return to the city. Therefore, everyone knew how tragic it was to get lost. Thus, the players of the Elven City set up an unwritten rule. If they met someone who got lost, they must not leave them to die. Because of this, everyone helped each other. The Elf City was very harmonious, and the atmosphere was very good. This was very rare in the game. If anyone dared to break this harmony, they would probably be ridiculed to death by others. The large man was also a person who cared about his reputation and knew the seriousness of this matter. Seeing his little sister and little brother looking down on him, he had no choice but to say, Old Seven, give him your compass. Why me? A girl in pink with big eyes asked unhappily from the back of the team. Because you screamed the loudest just now. The girl in pink rolled her eyes and said, Ozzy screamed even louder than me, but she's my little sister. The large man shrugged. Damn you. The girl in pink glared at the large man and then walked in front of Wang Yu. She handed a round object to Wang Yu. My name is Thousand Vermilion Purple. The girl in pink said to Wang Yu. My name is... Wang Yu was about to give his name out of courtesy when Thousand Vermilion Purple said, It doesn't matter what your name is. Just remember to mail it back to me after you're done using it. Wang Yu scratched his head and thought to himself that this team was really... The large man said, All right, now that you have the compass, you could go do your quest. Let's go. With that, the large man turned around and led the team forward. Thank you, everyone. Wang Yu said gratefully. You're welcome. This is what we should do. The girl in purple said to Wang Yu with a smile, and then jogged to catch up with the team. Brother, why didn't you let that person follow us? Why did you give him such a precious tool? The girl in purple asked in confusion. The large man said, That kid is not weak. I'm afraid he's from the Tyrants Association. No way. Look at his blank face. How can he be an expert? The girl in purple laughed. How can he be weak if he can get lost in a level 30 monster zone? Oh, that's true. You knew he was suspicious, but you still gave him the compass. The girl in purple said, Didn't you force me? The large man said angrily. After using the compass, Wang Yu's map and coordinates finally lit up again. With the coordinates and map, Wang Yu basically confirmed his location. The Elven City was currently south of Wang Yu and northeast of Wang Yu. There was a blue area. The blue area represented the quest area. It seemed like this was the legendary Immortal Trail Forest. Chapter 286. Reeks, The further Wang Yu went, the deeper he went into the cursed forest. The monsters' levels became higher and higher, and they became more difficult to deal with. For example, past the hooktail scorpion area was the territory of the level 35 scythe beetle. These monsters lived in groups, could fly, and gave very little experience. They were quite annoying, and most people would take a detour when they saw them. Wang Yu was an outsider, so he didn't know the rules here. As a result, he had accidentally provoked a bunch of monsters, and it took him a lot of effort to get rid of them. Along the way, Wang Yu passed through the Goblin Guard's line of defense and finally arrived at the blue area on the map. What puzzled Wang Yu was that apart from being covered by gray fog, it was no different from the rest of the cursed forest. What made Wang Yu even more depressed was that the system had notified him that he couldn't enter the area covered by the fog. Could there be an entrance? Wang Yu muttered to himself as he started to walk around the fog in search of an entrance. After walking for a short while, Wang Yu suddenly heard the sounds of fighting coming from not far away. Hey, there's someone! Wang Yu hurriedly went over. After getting closer, Wang Yu saw a group of gray goblins surrounding a group of people and attacking them. This group of people was quite familiar. It was the group that Wang Yu had just encountered. The goblins surrounding them were completely different from the wretched goblin guards that Wang Yu had seen earlier. These fellows all had bulging muscles and were very sturdy. Their expressions were also very valiant. What's more, there was a wolf riding on their crotch. Wang Yu used Detect, and the goblin's stats appeared in front of him. Goblin Gale, Wolf Knight's HP, 30,000 P, 2,000 skills, charge, sudden stab, musket shot monster description, the goblin race's most elite unit. Their mobility and forest combat abilities are second to none. After seeing the monster's description, Wang Yu knew that this group had run into trouble. Compared to human cavalry, these goblin knights weren't very large, but they were very fast and nimble, moving through the forest without any hindrance. When human cavalry fought, they would always crush their opponents. There was no such thing as surrounding them. These goblin knights were actually circling around Qianju, Wanzi, and the others, firing their muskets from time to time, causing the large tank at the very front to wobble. Fortunately, the party's coordination was quite good. As a cleric, Scarlet Wanzi's skills were also quite good. With her healing and the protection of the surrounding trees, the party had yet to suffer any casualties. However, the situation was not very optimistic. Facing such a large group of elite monsters, the party could only defend themselves. They could not fight back. Bro, didn't you say there was a boss here? How did it become like this? The purple-clothed girl complained. I don't know either. They weren't here when we arrived in the morning. Now, there's a group of monsters. The big man was clearly stunned by the group of goblins. He still hadn't recovered from shock. The team's space to dodge became smaller and smaller. The pressure on everyone increased, and resistance became more and more difficult. Damn, looks like we'll be returning to the city for free this time. Boss Gale, you're really something. Everyone laughed and looked down on the large man. That's right, you have to compensate us. I want to drink Vanilla Drunk. Vanilla Drunk was the most expensive wine in the Elven City Tavern, 1 gold per bottle. It was on the same level as the wine that Wang Yu fed Hermit. Damn you, don't take advantage of the situation. The large man said dejectedly, malt wine will do. Stingy, go drink some cold water. Everyone looked down on the large man again, and then stored their weapons and equipment in their bags, giving up on resisting. The chance of equipment dropping in a bag was much lower than if it was on the player's body. So in the game of reincarnation, when players knew that they were going to die, they would choose this safe method. After all, losing experience was a small matter, but losing equipment was a huge loss. At this moment, everyone's vision darkened. Wang Yu's figure descended from the sky, and he kicked a gnome knight in the face, kicking the gnome knight off the wind wolf's back. Wang Yu then somersaulted backwards and landed with eagle stamp. At the same time, Wang Yu's right hand grabbed the head of a nearby gnome, and a white light shot out from his left hand. Another 2 gnomes fell to the ground, and Wang Yu created an opening in the encirclement of the gnome knights. Damn, is this a hidden quest? The players, who were waiting for their deaths with their eyes closed, were dumbfounded. The gnome knights were all moving at high speeds, but Wang Yu had accurately stepped on one of the gnomes' faces before forcefully landing on the ground, simultaneously killing the other two gnomes. Wang Yu's skills were all non-directional, and they did not have a lock-on function. Yet, he was able to accurately hit the moving targets. Such a feat could only be accomplished with precise control. Moreover, Wang Yu's movements were as smooth as flowing water, full of confidence. It was as if everything was within Wang Yu's expectations, shocking everyone. None of them were ordinary players, so they could naturally see the unparalleled control and technique required. In the minds of ordinary players, only high-tiered NPCs could accomplish such a feat, so everyone treated Wang Yu as an NPC, thinking that this was a hidden quest. "Everyone, hurry up and charge out." Wang Yu turned her head and shouted at the group, before leaping forward to meet the other goblin knights. When everyone saw Wang Yu's appearance, they were once again stunned, and they simultaneously cried out in shock. "Damn, it's you!" Everyone had guessed that Wang Yu was not a noob, but they did not expect Wang Yu to be this strong. Although they were shocked, they still hurriedly put on their equipment and charged out of the gap that Wang Yu had created. In just one exchange, Wang Yu had knocked another 5 gnome knights off their backs with a few punches and kicks. He then passed through the encirclement and regrouped with the others. There were a total of 20 gnome knights, and Wang Yu had knocked nearly half of them down. As for Chanju Wanzi's team of 8, apart from the shield bearer and Chanju Wanzi, who was a cleric, the others were either archers or thieves. With such a team, it was no wonder that they were surrounded by these gnome knights. You only have one shield bearer, and you dare to attack gnome knights? One was a little confused. The game was not like reality, where an archer could kill a group of gnome knights with a single round of far shot. In the game, the best way to deal with gnome knights was to fight them head-on, knocking them off their horses. This was common knowledge that even Wang Yu knew. Who knew that there would be gnome knights in the forest? The shield bearer said gloomily. Indeed, gnome knights were a large unit, and they could not display their speed advantage in the forest. They could only be used as targets. However, for this small team to encounter elite monsters like the gnome knights, it had to be said that their luck was not very good. Chapter 287. Reeks, can you do it alone? Let me help you. The big guy volunteered. Previously, the horseman's aggro was on the others, which was why Wang Yu was able to launch a sneak attack. Now, the horseman's aggro was all on Wang Yu. It was unrealistic for an unarmed grandmaster of combat to fight against horsemen head-on. No need, you just have to protect the others. After speaking, Wang Yu charged forward. Then, Thousand Red and the others saw the most shocking scene they had seen since they entered the game. Wang Yu first sent a flying kick in midair, sending the cavalryman at the very front flying. Then, she spread out her hands, and a rod appeared in her hands. She aimed it at another cavalryman who was charging at her. The horseman could not dodge in time and was hit in the head by Wang Yu's staff, causing the horseman to fall to the ground. In Rebirth, horseman monsters without their mounts were basically useless. Seeing this, the others used their skills to stall the horsemen that had fallen to the ground. When the horsemen at the back saw their companions being knocked to the ground, they roared and charged forward in groups of 2. Wang Yu chuckled and dodged to the side. He bent down and placed the long rod in his hand horizontally in front of the 2 trees. Horsemen that were running were most afraid of tripping ropes. The quality of the staff in Wang Yu's hands was quite good, causing 2 groups of horsemen to be tripped up. The rest of the people behind him followed up and killed the 4 fellows. At this moment, the last 6 cavalrymen suddenly split up their formation and turned around to surround Wang Yu from 3 directions. Wang Yu put away his long rod and leaped up, stepping on the tree trunk and climbing up. The branches of the cursed forest were dense and intertwined. Wang Yu jumped out of the horseman's encirclement and descended from the sky. With a kick, a staff, and a punch, another 3 horsemen were kicked to the ground and killed by the others who were waiting for an opportunity. The last 3 horsemen wanted to escape, but Wang Yu followed them in blink and used wolf kick, ferocious tiger strike, and cloud grasp. Wang, the sound of 3 objects falling to the ground could be heard, and the people on the side once again swarmed up, turning the knights that had fallen to the ground into white light. The gnome knights were wiped out. I'm not dreaming, right? Scarlet Vermilion, 10,000 flowers, pinched the face of a short man beside her and muttered, "Are you in pain?" "No, looks like I'm dreaming." "Nonsense. There's no pain in the game. Pay my ass." The short man slapped Thousand Vermilion Purple's hand away. In fact, it wasn't just Qianzhu and Wanzi. Everyone was once again shocked by Wang Yu's strength. No one would believe that a Grandmaster of Combat had defeated an entire cavalry regiment. However, it had happened right in front of everyone's eyes, completely subverting their view of the game. Especially that big guy. He pounced over like a mad dog, grabbed Wang Yu's hand and said, "Brother, I'm called Violent Storm. Do you have a team? Our team is still missing 2 people. I think you're the most suitable." "What's a battle team?" Wang Yu asked curiously. Wang Yu knew about teams, but this was the first time he had heard of something like a battle team. Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard this. They began to try all sorts of methods to test if they were dreaming. F***CK, a guy who was as strong as a cheat, didn't even know what a battle team was. What the F***CK? It's a team that competes professionally. "I'm the captain of the Violent Storm battle team," Violent Storm said. With the development of online competitive gaming, the circle of gamers was getting bigger and bigger. More and more gamers were investing in the esports industry. In the current era, online competitive gaming had become a very popular profession. A new model like Rebirth had broken the model of gaming that only existed for keyboard and mouse players. It had also driven the esports industry. Countless esports players entered the game at the first moment of the open beta, and the Violent Storm battle team was one of them. Professional competition? There's even professional competition in games? Wang Yu was completely dumbfounded. Wang Yu's impression of online gaming was still at the beginning of the 21st century. Being able to earn money in games was already a surprise to Wang Yu. Wang Yu even felt that being a professional gamer was a bit of a waste. He didn't expect that there would be professional competitions in games. Of course, do you know about the Olympics? Esports is already an Olympic sport. Violent Storm said excitedly. I wonder if your battle team is considered strong?" Wang Yu asked. "This?" Violent Storm pointed at the girl in purple, and then said wretchedly without answering the question, "This is my sister, Thousand Vermilion. She doesn't have a boyfriend yet." F***CK, Violent Storm. "Do you have to be so shameless? Aren't you tired of always using this trick?" Thousand Vermilion gave him the middle finger in disdain. The others also agreed, "Yeah, that's how you tricked me into joining." Wang Yu was speechless. "Actually, I'm already married. Speaking of which, I don't think that was the question I asked just now." "That," Violent Storm blushed. "Although our Violent Storm battle team is only ranked 92 in the gaming circle, there are so many esports players. It's already not bad for us to be in the top 100. "Oh," Wang Yu nodded. Actually, he didn't know what level it was to be in the top 100 in the gaming circle. "Speaking of which, brother, what's your name? With such skills, if you join our battle team, we have a chance of making it into the top 50 in this competition," Violent Storm said excitedly. "I'm Iron Ox," Wang Yu said plainly. "Iron Ox. F***CK, your guru Iron Ox." Hearing Wang Yu's self-introduction, everyone shouted again. At the same time, they looked at Violent Storm with disdain. "Violent Storm, you're really something. You want the #1 expert to be your follower? We don't have that kind of courage." Violent Storm blushed and said, "Guru, I'm really sorry, but I really have to thank you this time. If it wasn't for you, we would have returned to the city for free." "What guru? Just call me Nyogu," Wang Yu said humbly. "If it wasn't for you guys, I'd still be wandering around in the forest." "Huh?" Violent Storm laughed awkwardly. He clearly didn't want to help Wang Yu just now. "All right, what mission are you guys doing?" Wang Yu asked Violent Storm. This group of people looked pretty good. Wang Yu was afraid that his mission would be the same as theirs. He might as well tell them first so that there wouldn't be any unnecessary misunderstandings. "Bounty mission. Kill the thief Yoda. I clearly saw him here this morning. I don't know why this thing suddenly appeared." Violent Storm pointed at the gray fog and said in confusion, Chapter 288. Oh, hearing that Tempest's quest didn't clash with his own, Wang Yu relaxed. However, when he heard Tempest's last sentence, Wang Yu's heart trembled. He thought to himself, the moment I came here, their quest met with an obstacle. Is there a connection between the two? Nyoga, what quest do you have? Tempest asked Wang Yu. Kill someone called the King of Rock Giants. Wang Yu replied. That's good, that's good. Tempest felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. It seemed that Tempest was also worried that the quest would clash. If they hadn't seen Wang Yu's strength before, the fierce Gale party might have thought of fighting him. However, now that they had seen Wang Yu's strength, they would have no choice but to give up on the quest. Since that's the case, let's go together. We can look out for each other. Wang Yu took the initiative to say. The fierce Gale party didn't have many tanky classes. If they encountered another cavalry, they definitely wouldn't be able to handle it. On the other hand, Wang Yu was extremely unfamiliar with this place. He was afraid that he would get lost again. Thank you, Nyoga, Tempest said gratefully. Wang Yu said, this fog should be the key to our quest. It's just that we don't know how to enter. This fog definitely has an entrance. There are gnome knights patrolling here, so the entrance is definitely not far away. Tempest said. Just as Tempest finished speaking, the fierce Gale party short archer called Whirlwind suddenly called out, Boss, there seems to be an opening up ahead. Oh, let's go take a look. Saying that, everyone hurriedly ran over. When they arrived at the place that Whirlwind had mentioned, they saw two giant trees. In between the giant trees was a pitch-black opening. It looked like a large door that stood on the side of the fog. Let's go in. Wang Yu walked over and said, This won't be dangerous, right? Tempest frowned. The gnome knights had made him suffer. He didn't dare to advance recklessly. It's okay, I'll go first. With that said, Wang Yu took the lead and went in. Seeing Wang Yu take the lead and go in, Violent Storm's courage was slightly shaken. He gritted his teeth and followed closely behind. After entering the cave, everyone's eyes lit up and they suddenly felt enlightened. Just like Wang Yu, the members of the Gale battle team thought that the cave would be gloomy and gloomy when they saw the gray fog shrouding the cave. Who would have thought that the cave would be so different? Inside the cave was also a forest. Unlike the dark and oppressive cursed forest outside, the trees here were not very tall. Bright sunlight shone down, making everyone feel relaxed and happy. For the residents of Elven City who lived under the shade of trees for a long time, this kind of scene of sunlight was very rare. Just as everyone was marveling at the scenery within the gray fog, they suddenly received a system notification. You have discovered the one-time hidden instance dungeon, Immortal Trail Forest. One-time hidden instance dungeon. I'm going to be rich this time. Seeing this notification, the members of the Gale battle team shouted excitedly. The reincarnated world was very vast, and the game had a high degree of freedom. Other than the main system dungeons and the main city's dungeons, there was also a type of hidden instance dungeon in the leveling area. This type of hidden instance dungeon was equivalent to a miracle system. It was a one-time item, and there were many good things in it. How much one could find depended on one's luck. However, this type of hidden instance dungeon was relatively rare, and the probability of encountering it was less than 1 in 10,000. It was said that during the 6 months of closed beta testing, only 1 out of the 20,000 closed beta players had encountered a hidden instance dungeon. That player then went from a nobody to a famous expert. This matter caused an uproar, and there were still legends about the hidden instance dungeon on the forum. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a rare item? How could the members of the Gale battle team not be excited? The hidden instance dungeon had a high degree of freedom. It was not like other instance dungeons that gave players an instance dungeon quest and told them how to complete the instance dungeon. Other than giving the instance dungeon a name, there was an additional option to exit the instance dungeon on the upper right corner of the interface. After that, there was nothing else. This instance dungeon is very unique. Wang Yu looked at the quest pane out of habit. After realizing that there were no quests, he muttered, Yup, you have to find the things in this instance dungeon by yourself, Galestorm said. There seems to be a village over there. Wang Yu covered her eyes with her hand and looked around, then pointed to the front and said, The Fairy Trail Forest had a wide field of vision. Although Wang Yu's vision was not as sharp as an archer's with eagle eye, it was still not bad. He was able to spot the village in the distance at a glance. Yup, Swirling Cloud said, it's a village. Let's go take a look. After saying that, the group walked in the direction of the village. The village seemed to be not far from them, but when they actually walked, they realized that this instance dungeon was not just big. Moreover, in this instance dungeon, there were dangers everywhere. After walking for a short distance, the group was ambushed by a wave of goblin musketeers. These guys were not very fast, and their HP was not high. However, the attack power of the muskets in their hands was very strong. As soon as they exchanged fire, the goblin musketeers rained down a barrage of bullets, catching the members of the Gale battle team off guard. Fortunately, Wang Yu was there. He rushed over in time and eliminated the weak guys, saving the Gale battle team from the fate of being annihilated the moment they entered the instance dungeon. Although the goblin musketeers were not easy to deal with, they were quite powerful. Apart from a pair of level 35 silver grade boots, the goblin musketeers also dropped a secondary weapon, a musket. The secondary weapon was a rare item. Although it was only a piece of white equipment, the sight of Wang Yu fiddling with the musket made the members of the Gale battle team drool with envy. After cleaning up the battlefield, the group continued forward. After eliminating 2 waves of goblin knights, 2 waves of goblin musketeers, and 3 waves of goblin patrols, the group finally saw the entrance to the village. The loot of the hidden dungeon was not just for show. The drop rate of the elite monsters along the way was relatively high. 7 waves of monsters had dropped a total of 6 pieces of silver-grade equipment. At this stage of the game, those who could equip a full set of silver-grade equipment were all famous experts. After all, the gatekeepers of a normal dungeon did not necessarily drop silver-grade equipment, not to mention the small monsters. With such a bountiful harvest, the members of the Gale battle team were so excited that their hearts nearly jumped out of their chests. They looked forward to the later part of the game. After killing the last goblin patrol, Wang Yu and the others arrived at the entrance of the village. Then, a wretched figure entered their line of sight. Crap, it's Yoda. He actually hid in the hidden dungeon. Tempest shouted as he pointed at Yoda. Yoda Thief level 35 silver elite cost. 300000 cost. 5,000 skills. Steel, musket shot, haste, poison dagger. When the members of the Gale battle team heard Tempest shout, they hurriedly cast Detect on the group. They then got into formation. The archers knocked their arrows and fired without hesitation. I repeat, I am very pure. Thank you. Chapter 289. Genius in 1 second. Remember Net, providing you with exciting novels to read. Yoda wasn't tall. Compared to the sturdy gnome knights, Yoda was thin and weak. It was obvious that he was an agility-type boss. Yoda was standing at the entrance of the village sneakily, looking around as if he was waiting for someone. The 4 archers of the Gale battle team immediately launched an attack on Yoda. However, just as the arrows were about to hit Yoda, Yoda casually dodged to the side, dodging the arrows. Then, he turned his gaze to the crowd. Seeing this scene, the archers of the Gale battle team were slightly surprised. The bow in the hands of the short archer, Whirlwind, flashed with a green light, and 5 arrows flew out in a fan shape. In the Gale battle team, besides the team leader, Tempest, the strongest was Whirlwind. The skill that Whirlwind used was called multi-arrow. It was an advanced skill for sharpshooters who advanced to level 20. It could shoot 3 arrows in a 30-degree range, and it was considered a small area of effect skill. Whirlwind's multi-arrow was an enhanced version. It could shoot 5 arrows, and within the same range, he could shoot 2 more arrows than a normal player, so the arrows were denser. Yoda didn't dodge. He took out a green dagger and lightly swung it, knocking away the arrows in front of him. Then, he quickly rushed towards a crowd. F***ck me. Everyone was shocked when they saw this. An archer's volley was focused on a single target. Players with slightly higher agility and reaction speed could easily dodge the attacks. Hence, it was reasonable that Yoda had evaded the attack. However, the fact that even Whirlwind's AoE attacks had failed to harm Yoda was unacceptable. While everyone was still in a daze, Yoda had already rushed to the front of the team. The Gale Battle Team was one of the top 100 expert teams in the country. Tempest's individual strength and awareness were also very strong. Seeing Yoda rush over, he raised his shield, lowered his head, and used charge. Yoda was caught off guard and was hit by Tempest. He was sent flying. Since Yoda was a boss, the knockback effect of Tempest did not make him lose his balance. After Yoda landed firmly, he looked around, lowered his head, and rushed into the formation again. Seeing this, Violent Rainstorm raised his shield and was about to smash Yoda. Yoda turned around and flashed to Violent Rainstorm's side. His left hand slapped Violent Rainstorm's arm. In the next moment, Violent Rainstorm received a notification. You don't have a weapon. You cannot use Shield Bash. When Tempest looked up, the shield in his hand had actually disappeared. Damn, you're a despicable thief. That shield was a genuine gold-grade equipment, and it was the strongest piece of equipment in the Gale Battle Team. Gale Rainstorm had always viewed it as his lifeblood. How could Violent Storm hold his temper when his family jewels were snatched away? He flew into a rage and casually took out a giant sword and slashed over. Yoda did not panic. He dodged the arrows shot by the archers, and with a slap of his left hand, the Tempest sword was also taken away. Fuck! Violent Rainstorm was completely dumbfounded. In the system settings, players could only equip 2 sets of equipment at most in battle. At this moment, both his shield and greatsword had been snatched away, and Violent Rainstorm was completely empty-handed. Although shield warriors did not rely on damage to make a living, without a weapon, Violent Rainstorm could not use any of his skills apart from taunt. He had directly become a decoration. Of course, as a tank, if he fought to the death without a weapon, he probably wouldn't even need to use taunt to maintain the aggro. After disarming Violent Rainstorm, Yoda brandished his dagger and rushed behind Violent Rainstorm, ruthlessly stabbing his waist. Violent Rainstorm's health bar immediately fell by nearly 1,000. At the same time, a green skull appeared on Violent Rainstorm's forehead, and his health rapidly fell. Innumerable Vermilion Purple didn't dare to be negligent, and quickly cast a few heals to restore Violent Rainstorm's health. Hurry and help! Violent Rainstorm shouted. 4 thieves appeared beside Yoda out of thin air, taking out their daggers and stabbing Yoda's back. Yoda relied on the fact that he was a boss, and his skin was thick and coarse. He didn't care at all, and with a slap of his left hand, the daggers in the thieves' hands instantly disappeared. Fuck! The 4 thieves were dumbfounded. The thief class, without a weapon and stealth, was just a sitting duck. Yoda brandished his dagger and was about to stab the 4 thieves to death, but Violent Rainstorm grabbed his collar, and the 4 were able to escape. They activated swift steps and ran backwards. Yoda was used to stabbing people in the back, so how could he let these 4 thieves go? He broke free from Violent Rainstorm's hands and rushed into the crowd. The Tempest Battle Team was a fragile class. How could they withstand Yoda's torment? If it weren't for innumerable Vermilion Purple throwing out heals in a flurry, these people would already be dead by now, no matter how fast they ran. At this time, Yoda also noticed innumerable Vermilion Purple. He turned around and rushed in front of her, at the same time slapping her with his left hand. Wang Yu, who was watching from the sidelines, immediately choked. Fuck, Yoda, that wretched guy, actually stole innumerable Vermilion Purple's priest robe. After all, this was a game. In order to attract female players, female equipment in the game was always hot and sexy. For example, the light armor of the female archer class. Apart from the important parts of the chest and buttocks, the rest of the body was bare. Priests, on the other hand, had long robes that covered their bodies. The chest area wasn't too exposed, giving people a hazy sense of beauty. After innumerable Vermilion Purple's robe was stolen by Yoda, she was only left with undergarments that only covered 3 points. One was a bit better. He was an old married man, so there was nothing he hadn't seen before. However, the useless members of the Tempest Battle Team were all red in the face and neck. If the system could simulate a bloody scene, their noses would have already flowed all over the ground. Innumerable vermilion purple saw innumerable vermilion purple's fate and was quite shocked. She was so scared that she hugged herself and ran behind Violent Storm. Wang Yu shook his head. An NPC doing something like this was really lawless. Do you need help? Wang Yu asked Violent Storm. No matter what, Yoda was the boss of the Tempest Battle team. As an outsider, Wang Yu couldn't interfere. However, if he didn't interfere now, this old salty master would probably go even further. Seriously, the game designer's taste was really funny. No, the six men looked at innumerable vermilion purple's naked body, their thoughts drifting to who knows where. Yes, the two girls shouted in surprise. Only then did they pull the other men back. Only then did the men repeatedly say, yes, yes, yes. Chapter 290. Recommended reading. Yoda was short and skinny. Wang Yu could even catch a big guy like Erdis. So, throwing Yoda was like child's play to him. Ga. Yoda was confused by the sudden grab. When he saw that Wang Yu was alone, he rushed over with his dagger. Yoda was an agility-type boss, so he was quite fast. Wang Yu could not compete with him in terms of speed. He could only stand still and wait for Yoda to stab him. When Yoda's dagger was about to stab Wang Yu stretched out his hand and easily grabbed Yoda's arm that was holding the dagger. He then turned his wrist and kicked Yoda's body. Yoda was once again kicked a few meters away and fell to the ground. Wang Yu's two attacks dealt over 5,000 damage to Yoda. The members of the Gale Battle team were dumbfounded and their jaws dropped to the ground. F*** Kane Yoga. How much agility did you add? The archers of the Gale Battle team were shocked. Archers were the class with the highest agility growth. However, they did not have much of an advantage against Yoda in terms of speed. However, as a Grandmaster of Combat, Wang Yu was able to easily block Yoda's attack. This was almost supernatural. Wang Yu smiled and said, "This has nothing to do with agility." Yoda was not a Grandmaster of Combat. His attacks had no other advantages other than speed. Therefore, in the eyes of a Grandmaster of Combat like Wang Yu, Yoda was full of flaws. When Wang Yu saw Yoda raise his hand, she knew where Yoda's dagger was going to land. She had long prepared her hand there. In this way, it was as if Yoda took the initiative to crash into it and gave his wrist to Wang Yu. Ga. Yoda got up and looked angrily at Wang Yu. He lowered his body and rushed over again. Wang Yu remained calm. When Yoda approached him, he reached out and grabbed Yoda again. Yoda smiled sinisterly. His left hand glowed with white light and quickly slapped Wang Yu's fist. TCH. Wang Yu looked down on people like Yoda who relied on the system to steal other people's items. As if he had already expected Yoda to do this, Wang Yu sneered. His other hand stretched out diagonally and grabbed Yoda's left wrist. Then, with a flip of his hands, Yoda's arms were directly twisted to the back by Wang Yu. After that, Wang Yu stepped on Yoda's back with her left foot, causing Yoda to fall to the ground. Then, Wang Yu raised both of her arms, causing Yoda to let out a blood-curdling scream. The dagger in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Wang Yu kicked with his right foot, sending the dagger flying towards Tempest's feet. Tempest Rainstorm was overjoyed. He picked up the dagger and looked at it. Toxic dagger. Poison. After seeing its attributes, Tempest Rainstorm curled his lips and casually tossed the dagger to the side. Yoda was a boss with a steal skill. He had always been the one to steal from others. He didn't expect to be disarmed this time. He was so angry that his face turned red. Whoosh! Yoda shouted. His body flashed with a golden light as he activated super armor and broke free from Wang Yu's hands. He flipped forward and stood up. He casually pulled out an extremely exquisite firearm and aimed it at Wang Yu. Bang! Yoda didn't hesitate and pulled the trigger. At this moment, Wang Yu's figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of Yoda. Yoda's face was filled with panic. He wanted to pull the trigger again, but no matter how much force Yoda exerted, the trigger didn't move in the slightest. Ga. Yoda hurriedly lowered his head. He saw Wang Yu's hand holding the gun's handle. Wang Yu's thumb was inserted behind the trigger, locking the trigger. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu took advantage of Yoda's absent-minded state to press his hand down and forcibly snatch the firearm from Yoda's hand. Yoda was stunned on the spot. A huge question mark appeared on his head. At the same time, Wang Yu's other fist fiercely smashed into Yoda's face. Blood-red numbers once again appeared on Yoda's head. GA. GA. Yoda's cries were extremely miserable. His left hand glowed with white light as he continuously slapped at Wang Yu's arm. Students who played wuxiao online games would know that in addition to speed, there was another attribute called hand attack. It represented the speed of the player's arms. However, in Rebirth, the agility attribute only related to the player's movement speed. There was no setting for hand attack. Therefore, in manual mode, the player's hand attack speed was completely dependent on the player's control. When Wang Yu was 7 or 8 years old, he could accurately pinch a fly with chopsticks. His hand attack speed was fast, accurate, and ruthless. It was unimaginable to ordinary people. Even the Titan King Arceus had suffered under Wang Yu's hands, let alone a small gnome. Yoda's hands danced without any pattern. Wang Yu calmly dodged. Yoda grabbed at Wang Yu more than 10 times, but he didn't touch Wang Yu at all. On the other hand, Wang Yu found an opening in Yoda's defense. He used both his hands and knees to grab Yoda, throwing him to the ground. Then, he used both his hands and feet to hammer Yoda. Wang Yu's attack frequency was fast and rhythmic. Every punch and kick was as accurate as the beat of a drum. Moreover, he was able to interrupt Yoda's quick recover at the right time. A series of health drops floated above Yoda's head. Even after Yoda was beaten to death, the poor guy didn't get up. The members of the Gale battle team were frozen in place. They watched Wang Yu torture Yoda, speechless for a long time. After receiving the system notification that the quest was completed, the team regained their composure. Speaking of which, that was a level 35 silver boss, right? Violent Rainstorm asked doubtfully. Yes. Everyone nodded blankly. He was killed by a series of punches and kicks. Violent Rainstorm rubbed his eyes. Everyone was still stupefied. No problem. F***CK. Which one of them is the boss? Violent Rainstorm's mind was in a mess. Speaking of which, Nyogo, what did Yoda drop? 1,000 vermilion, Purple asked. Let me see. Wang Yu crouched down and started searching Yoda's body. Looking at Yoda's wretched and unsatisfied expression, Wang Yu thought maliciously, "Damn it, you old pervert. You never thought that there would be a day when you would be touched by someone, right? F***CK. Why did I make myself feel disgusted? Shield of Thorns? Why is there such a thing?" The first item that Wang Yu looted was a very familiar shield. This made Wang Yu puzzled. The bosses in Rebirth had always been very stylish. They would never drop items based on different classes. This thief gnome was clearly a thief, but it had dropped a shield warrior item. It was really strange. "My Nyogo, this is the shield that he stole from me," Violent Rainstorm said in a panic. Oh, no wonder. Wang Yu threw the shield to Violent Rainstorm and started searching again. Death Fong. Mine. Windstrike Stab. Mine. Sure enough, wool comes from the sheep's back. Wang Yu searched the corpses 5 times, and all of them were items that were stolen by Yoda, including Scarlet Vermilion and 10,000 Purple's clothes. Seeing that there were still 2 more chances to loot the corpses, Wang Yu thought to himself, "Give me something good." After saying that, Wang Yu stretched out his hand, and a book appeared in Wang Yu's hand. I've hit the jackpot. Seeing that book, even someone like Wang Yu, who had no need for game skills, couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. P.S. Please pay attention to the public account. Chapter 291. Steal, Rare Skill Offhand. 30% chance to steal a target's item. 10% bonus to targets that are lower level, 10% weakening to targets that are higher level. If steal fails, the target will be stunned for 5 seconds. Class requirement. General, it really is steal. Wang Yu exclaimed excitedly after receiving the skill book. Although Wang Yu looked down on Yoda, who used a skill to disarm others, the steal skill had left a deep impression on Wang Yu. The skill could strip a person's clothes with a wave of his hand, which was enough to show how overpowered the skill was. So when Wang Yu was fighting Yoda, he had been thinking that it would be great if he could drop a steal skill book. Who knew that the system would be so considerate this time? When the members of the Gale Battle team saw the Steel Skill book in Wang Yu's hands, they all revealed looks of envy. In the official thief skill tree after reincarnation, there was no such thing as steel. Even the hidden skill tree didn't have such a thing. Therefore, even though the thief class was called a thief, they were actually good at picking locks. Even the thief subclass, godly thief, was only better at picking locks. They had never even thought about something as heaven-defying as the steel skill. Although Wang Yu's steel skill didn't have a 100% success rate like Yoda's, this offhand skill was definitely enough to turn an ordinary player into an expert. Just think about it. If you wanted to steal something, you would at most lose a bit of experience. If you succeeded, you would gain a lot of profit. What was the difference between this and stealing an account? If such a person didn't become an expert, then he would be as stupid as a pig. The hidden dungeon's reputation was well-deserved. It was just a boss at the entrance, and it had already dropped such an item. Who knew what kind of overpowered item the boss inside would drop? Wang Yu happily looked at the skill book in his hands. He then stuffed it into his ring and continued looting Yoda's corpse. With regards to Wang Yu's actions, the Gale Battle team had no complaints. Although Yoda was their boss, without Wang Yu, they wouldn't even be able to complete their quest, let alone retrieve the equipment they had lost. Naturally, they wouldn't dare to covet such a godly skill. After all, it was important to be content. The last item was a quest item called Elf Queen's Recommendation. Its function wasn't specified, so Wang Yu kept it. After looting the corpse, Wang Yu glared at Yoda in disdain. As a boss, he only dropped one valuable item. What a stingy bastard. Unbeknownst to her, according to the system's settings, after a boss died in a hidden dungeon, all the items on its body would be dropped. In order to prevent players like Wang Yu, who did not play by the rules, from directly snatching the boss's equipment, the system also had a setting. That was, items that were snatched by force would have no attributes. It couldn't be helped. When the forest was big, there were all kinds of birds. Unscrupulous players could be found everywhere, and Wang Yu wasn't the only one. If Wang Yu hadn't disarmed Yoda's 2 weapons, Wang Yu might have been able to loot another 2 gold-tier weapons. Fortunately, Wang Yu didn't know about this setting. Otherwise, he would have regretted it to death. After all, it was a pile of shiny silver. After killing Yoda, the Gale Battle team's quest was complete. In order to thank Wang Yu for helping them, the Gale Battle team decided to help Wang Yu with the quest. Wang Yu wanted to say that he didn't need them to drag him down, but that would be too unreasonable. Helpless, he could only acquiesce. Walking into the Immortal Trail Forest Village, everyone felt as if they had entered another world. The village was spacious and bright. The scenery was even more elegant than the ancient elven tree where the elves lived. The emerald green grass, the floating petals from time to time, and the little insects flying everywhere made the whole village full of vitality. The residents of the village were all gnomes. What puzzled everyone was that the NPCs in the village were all commoners. This meant that these residents weren't monsters, and they couldn't be attacked. After walking around for a while without finding any monsters, everyone became more and more confused. In the end, Wang Yu grabbed a gnome uncle and asked, "Do you know where the Rock Giant King is?" The gnome uncle looked at Wang Yu and said mechanically, "You can ask the village chief, Koroni. He's very knowledgeable." "Where's the village chief?" Wang Yu asked again. "In the square in the middle of the village," the gnome uncle said. "By the way, are all of you commoners here?" Tempest interrupted. Tempest was a little unwilling. They had finally found a hidden dungeon, but it was filled with NPCs that couldn't be killed. Wouldn't that be too unfair? The gnome tilted his head and repeated to Tempest as if he was looking at an idiot, "You can go ask him." All right. It seemed like these were just some normal NPCs with no intelligence. The group had no choice but to let the poor gnome uncle go. They followed the road signs and arrived at the square in the middle of the village. The village square was actually the same as Yuhuicheng's Central Street. It was a commercial street, and all kinds of gnome merchants were there, waving their hands to greet their customers. "Come and take a look. Is there anything you want?" The great gnomes are the best alchemists. Similar self-praising voices rose and fell. Wang Yu and the group went straight to an elderly gnome wearing a cloak and holding a walking stick. May I ask if you're the village chief, Karoni? Wang Yu asked. Hello, outsider. I seem to smell the sin of my own kind on you. Karoni raised his head and said slowly. Wasn't that right? Wang Yu had just killed a gnome boss. Have you seen Yoda? Karoni asked. Who's Yoda? Wang Yu pretended to be ignorant. The other party had already said that he smelled the scent of his own kind. If he admitted that he had seen Yoda, the situation would definitely become awkward. Karoni said slowly, Yoda is a genius of the gnome race, and also one of the 8 elders of the gnome race. I've never seen him before. Wang Yu shook his head fiercely. At the same time, he repented. These gnomes aren't considered humans. Lying to them shouldn't be considered lying. Sigh, it's a pity that Yoda betrayed the gnome race. I heard that he committed a crime in the Elven City and stole the recommendation letter from the Elf Queen, Alice. Recently, he has been wandering around the Immortal Trail Forest. If you meet him, can you bring Alice's letter back? Karoni nagged. Yoda isn't actually a bad person. He stole the recommendation letter because he wanted to do his part for the gnome race and then return to the gnome race. He really isn't a bad person. He's just a little wretched. Unfortunately, he has already returned to the embrace of the great system god. Wang Yu muttered to himself. What did you say? Karoni's ears were still sharp despite his age. When he heard Wang Yu's words, he suddenly looked at Wang Yu with a sharp gaze. Wang Yu was stunned for a moment before saying, I've never seen Yoda, but I have a recommendation letter. Chapter 292. Reeks. As he spoke, Wang Yu took out the letter that he had found on Yoda's body. Is it this letter? Wang Yu asked. Yes, it's this letter. Why is it with you? Karoni saw the recommendation letter and quickly forgot about Yoda's life and death. I picked it up, Wang Yu said seriously. Uffed. Seeing Wang Yu's serious face as he lied to the NPC, Tempest couldn't help but laugh. This was the first time they knew that they could talk to an NPC like this. Picked it up? Karoni clearly didn't believe him, but he quickly regained his calm and said, Since you were able to pick up this recommendation letter, it means that you are a warrior chosen by the heavens. Honorable warrior, can you solve my problem? System notification. You have activated the hidden quest, Goblin Chief's request. Do you accept? I am willing to serve you. Wang Yu wiped his sweat and accepted the quest. The behavior of NPCs was always hard to understand. Their own clansmen didn't trust them, but they easily trusted an outsider. It wasn't easy for these creatures to survive until the modern era. In the northeast of our village, there is a tribe of rock giants. They are evil creatures cursed by the souls of evil elves. They have been a threat to our village, and I hope you can eliminate them. System notification. You have accepted the hidden quest, Goblin Chief's request. Kill Rock Giant 030. Kill Rock Giant King 01. Huh, why did our quest change? Tempest suddenly said. Wang Yu turned around and asked, What's going on? Our quest was, complete the quest, return to the Elven City to find Alice, and wait for further instructions. Now it's changed to quest failed, and we have to report back to Alice. Looks like our quest is still the same. Wang Yu thought for a moment and suddenly understood. It turned out that Wang Yu's quest and the Tempest Battle Team's quest were actually the same main quest. The crux was the recommendation letter. Only those who obtained Karoni's trust with the recommendation letter could proceed to the next main quest. After Wang Yu displayed the quest, Violent Storm also understood this point. He thought to himself that the system was indeed a scam. It actually created a two-way quest. However, at the same time, he was glad that he had gotten to know Wang Yu. Otherwise, not only would he have died a horrible death, but his equipment would also have been taken by Wang Yu. It's not a loss for us to run into Nyogu, Violent Storm said, convinced. How could I do that? Wang Yu was a kind and honest person. When he heard Violent Storm's words, he felt rather guilty. After all, Violent Storm had helped him before. It's nothing. When we're fighting the rock giants, we'll just clean up the battlefield, Violent Storm said with a smile. The hidden dungeon was filled with good items. For Gale, if Wang Yu ate the meat, they would be satisfied if they could get the soup. Not to mention, if Wang Yu was the kind of player who relied on his strength, Gale wouldn't even get the soup. Wang Yu said straightforwardly, sure. Although Wang Yu was a newbie, his starting point was too high. The people he came into contact with were the best of the best. Level 35 gold equipment was trash in the eyes of Chuanjin, let alone silver equipment. It was better than nothing at all. After discussing the distribution of the loot, everyone was about to leave when Sharon spoke again. "Foreigners, you've come from afar. Don't you need to replenish your supplies?" Wang Yu scratched his head and asked the others, "Do you need supplies?" Fighters had a low consumption rate, and Wang Yu's equipment could recover mana and health, so he rarely used potions. The word supplies was a bit distant from Wang Yu. However, just because Wang Yu couldn't use them didn't mean that others couldn't. After all, before entering the village, they had killed their way in and used up a lot of supplies. "I want to replenish some arrows. Do you have any?" Thousand Vermilion Flower asked. "Blacksmith Cabal has everything you need," Sharon said. "Thanks." Thousand Vermilion Flower nodded and ran over to the blacksmith. Seeing this, the others also went to the merchant stalls and prepared to choose their supplies. High-quality arrows that add stats. At this moment, Thousand Vermilion Flower suddenly cried out. Thousand Vermilion Flower shouted as she sent a screenshot of the attributes. Arrows attack. 10 Blessing of Wood. Causes a 1.5-second entangling effect on the target. Triggers every 30 seconds. Damn, these arrows are so strong. Apart from Thousand Vermilion Flower, there were 3 other archers in the Gale Battle team. They couldn't help but exclaim when they saw the screenshot. Anyone who played the archer class would know that the ordinary arrows sold in the shops had a fixed damage of 33. Usually, when fighting archer class monsters, they would also drop arrows. Arrows with an attribute of 55 were considered top-notch. The arrows sold in the Immortal Trail Forest Smithy had a shockingly high attack of 1010. Moreover, they were magic arrows with special effects. This left the archers completely dumbfounded. Of course, the arrows sold in the Immortal Trail Forest Smithy also had a shocking attack of 1010. Moreover, they were magic arrows with special effects. This caused the archers to be completely dumbfounded. Of course, the price of the arrows was even more shocking. Normally, a quiver of arrows would sell for 50 copper coins, but here they were selling for 50 silver coins. The price had skyrocketed by 100 times. Most players weren't very rich. Those who had 100 gold coins on them were already tycoons. Players like the Gale Battle team, who weren't as rich as the rest, only had a few dozen gold coins saved up. They were clearly reluctant to spend so much on such luxurious items. These people weren't rich, but Wang Yu was. After the Immortal Trail Forest officially opened, the price of gold would greatly decrease. Wang Yu had been worrying about not having enough money to spend. Without hesitation, he fished out 500 gold coins and bought all 1,000 quiver of arrows in the shop. Wang Yu's extravagance shocked everyone in the Gale Battle team. Each of them stared at Wang Yu in shock, thinking that it was good to be rich. Wang Yu smiled faintly and took out 40 quiver of arrows. He distributed them to the 4 archers and said, "Feel free to use them. If you don't have enough, I still have more. However, I won't be giving them away for free." How can I accept this? Although the 4 of them resisted verbally, their bodies had already betrayed them. They couldn't help but accept the arrows. Gale said, "There are good items everywhere in the hidden dungeon. Let's go to the other shops." Okay, everyone nodded and split up to look at the other shops. The goblins really did have the best alchemy skills in the world. Aside from exquisite magic equipment, they also had intermediate health potions. They only sold them for 10 silver coins per bottle, which was much cheaper than Wang Yu's shop. Compared to the other cities that were monopolized by Xiaobing's workshop, it was even cheaper. Without hesitation, Wang Yu swept up all the items. When they finally reached the grocery store, there was only one item on the shelves, but it was marked at a high price of 1,000 gold coins. Chapter 293. Reeks, Advanced Health Potion Recipe. Recipe for Advanced Health Potions. Class Requirement: Grandmaster Alchemist, Intermediate Alchemist. Damn, when Tempest saw this prescription, he was completely speechless. The higher the difficulty of the game, the more valuable health potions would be. In the early stages of the game, where intermediate health potions were sold at sky-high prices, the value of an advanced health potion recipe could no longer be measured with money. After all, the rarest items in the game were potion recipes. It was said that only gold bosses above level 40 had a chance of dropping intermediate health potions. Currently, players were only around level 20. Fighting a gold boss that was 20 levels higher was unthinkable. Moreover, this advanced health potion recipe could only be dropped by epic bosses. The price of the recipe was 1,000 gold coins. Although the price was frighteningly high, it was not expensive when compared to the huge profits that the recipe could bring. If it wasn't for the fact that the members of the Tempest battle team only had a few hundred gold coins on them, Tempest would have bought it. Even if he could not use it, he could sell it for several times the price in an auction. Since the intermediate potions were so popular, Wang Yu naturally knew the price of this pharmacy card. Hence, without any hesitation, he bought it. Only then did Wang Yu sweep through all the stores in the village. "Nyoge, if you don't need this recipe, can you sell it to us? I'll immediately raise the money after I leave. I'll pay 3,000 gold. Tempest said. Wang Yu smiled. "Sorry, I can really use this recipe." Li Shui was grinding her skills in the guild encampment every day. By the time the game officially launches, her alchemy would have reached intermediate level. Only she could use this recipe in the entire game. "All right," Tempest said helplessly. Tempest did not believe Wang Yu's words. A Grandmaster Alchemist would take at least a year to grind. Wang Yu was most likely bragging when he said he could use it. However, since Wang Yu did not want to sell it, he could not force him. "All right, we're done with our supplies. Let's go do the quest." At Wang Yu's command, everyone packed up and followed Wang Yu out of the village through another exit. The Immortal Trail Forest Instance Dungeon was split into two parts. The front part belonged to the goblins, while the back part belonged to the demonized monsters. The village in the middle of the instance dungeon separated the two parts. At this moment, the area Wang Yu and the others were in was the demonized monster area. There were black demonized monsters everywhere. Demonized axe gnome skills. Axe strike, roll monster introduction. Controlled by the evil spirit of the elven city, the heroic warrior has become a devil's puppet. Beetle harpoon HP. 20,000 P, 5,000 skills, fly, javelin throw. Monster introduction. An insect that has been infected by evil and has become a subordinate of the seventh apostle, Sereth. The city of the heroes where the seventh apostle Sereth lived was next to the elven city in the reborn continent, so it was not rare for his subordinates to come to the monster area of the elven city to commit evil. Wang Yu and the others encountered a total of 2 groups of monsters on the left and right. Each group had 4 goblins and 4 beetles, sealing off the only path. "You guys attack the left side. I'll attack the side." With that, Wang Yu rushed toward the monsters. As soon as he walked into the monsters' aggro range, the javelins of the beetle harpooneers in the sky shot down. Wang Yu blocked left and right with both hands and caught all the javelins in his hands. Then he threw them at the demonized axe gnomes in front of him with all his might. The 4 javelins accurately pierced the bodies of the 4 gnomes, causing 3,000 damage to appear. While he grabbed and threw the javelins, Wang Yu did not stop moving forward at all. When the second round of javelins was ready, Wang Yu had already rushed into the middle of the 4 demonized gnomes. Sidekick uppercut slap. Wang Yu kept dodging, and the gnomes' axes could not even reach the corner of Wang Yu's clothes. As for the 4 demonized gnomes surrounding Wang Yu, their HP fell under Wang Yu's punches and kicks. At this time, the beetle's javelins had already landed. Wang Yu reached out again and threw all 4 javelins at a beetle's head at the same time, killing it instantly. This repeated, and the beetles in the sky were eliminated by Wang Yu first. After eliminating the beetles, the demonized gnomes did not have much HP left. Finally, Wang Yu stomped the ground with Thunder Stomp, and all 4 gnomes were killed. Shifeng had actually used less than 2 minutes to annihilate the 8 gnomes. Such astonishing efficiency made Violent Rainstorm's eyelids twitch. Of course, the members of Gale Battle Team were already numb to Wang Yu's monstrousness. When they saw that Wang Yu was killing 8 elite monsters by himself, they were not as surprised as before. At most, they could only sigh at Wang Yu's skills. Gale Battle Team's performance was actually quite good. At this stage of the game, most players' equipment had improved. Any player with a similar level would have a full set of bronze set equipment. It was no longer a dream for them to defeat common monsters of a higher level. However, their leveling efficiency was far inferior to fighting monsters of the same level. For experts like Gale, half of their equipment was silver grade. Their control was also much better than ordinary players. So, although it was somewhat strenuous to deal with these level 35 elite monsters, there was not much danger. Furthermore, they had Wang Yu's help. The demonized, axe-wielding gnomes were standard warrior monsters. Moreover, their equipment was tattered, so their defense was not high. Violent Rainstorm used a shield to aggro the gnomes, while the 4 assassins went into stealth and used backstab, cut throat, and gouge. With 1,000 Cinnabar, they did not have to worry about losing HP. The 5 of them took turns to stun the demonized, axe-wielding goblins. Their teamwork was quite good, and after a few rounds, they were able to turn a demonized, axe-wielding goblin into a corpse. After each demonized goblin was killed, they could loot an axe from its body. Goblin Flying Axe Attack, 1729 mana, 0/0 Spinning Flying Axe, active skill. Throws the axe to attack the enemy. TSK Tisk. Seeing the attributes of the Goblin Flying Axe, everyone was shocked and felt a trace of sorrow for the gnomes. They clearly had long-range attacks, but they chose to fight in close combat. It seemed that serving under a demon was not a happy thing. The Beetle Javelin Gunner was a monster that could fly. It was very annoying to fly in the air and throw javelins. However, the archers of the Elven City were much more professional than the players of other cities. As experts in archery, Gale Battle Team was naturally not to be trifled with. The 4 archers had long since lured the Beetle Javelin Gunner away. As they fought, they retreated in kite. It did not take long for the Beetle Javelin Gunner to be wiped out. At the same time, the archers looted quite a few javelins. Javelin Gunner Attack, 1517 mana, 0/0 quantity. Chapter 294. Recommended reading. After picking up the javelins, everyone happily asked Wang Yu, "Nyogo, are you going to loot those monsters?" "You guys can loot them." Wang Yu waved his hand. Wang Yu did not have the habit of looting small monsters. Moreover, these small items were not good items. Wang Yu was not interested in them at all. Since the Gale Battle Team came to help, he could not let them come for free. He might as well let them take the javelins. Wang Yu was not a stingy person. Moreover, Wang Yu's backpack did not have much space after clearing out the shop. If he picked up a pile of trash, he would have nowhere to put the items that the boss dropped. Wouldn't that be a waste? Hearing Wang Yu's words, the archers of the Fierce Gale Battle Squad trotted all the way to Wang Yu's side. After searching around, they found 4 throwing axes in a pile of javelins. As expected of a hidden instance dungeon. What high drop rate! After looting the monsters, everyone could not help but sigh. Aside from the ridiculous drop rates of monsters in the leveling area, monsters in normal instance dungeons did not drop anything other than quest items. Even a Hell Mode instance dungeon, the drop rate was not very high. Who would have thought that the drop rate in the demonized area of Immortal Trail Forest was 100%? This was simply shocking. After clearing up the battlefield, the group continued to advance along the small path. After killing 3 waves of gnomes and beetles, a golden figure suddenly appeared from the bushes at the side. He held a shield in one hand and a sword in the other, and he shouted loudly. The monster was small and skinny. It was not even as tall as a demonized goblin, but its appearance was exceptionally savage. From head to toe, the monster was made of pure gold. It shone with a golden light, so bright that no one dared to look directly at it. Even the slender longsword and diamond-shaped shield in its hands were made of pure gold. Its aura was much stronger than Yoda's. It was obvious that it was a tycoon. Golden Goblin, Racker, Skills, Profound Swordsmanship Triple Slash, Essence of Swordsmanship Cross Slash, Essence of Shield Block and Counterattack. Status, Full of Power, speed up by 400. Monster introduction. Rackle was once a goblin swordsman. In order to pursue supreme power, he fell into the embrace of the seventh apostle, Sereth. His strength is unfathomable. Looking at the Golden Goblin's attributes, everyone couldn't help but laugh. I couldn't tell that this grandson was a skilled player. They were used to seeing filthy and laughable goblins. Suddenly seeing such a powerful creature made their eyes light up. However, goblins were synonymous with weaklings. Even if it was a boss, it wasn't that strong. Slaves, despicable fellows, your souls will become the apostles' slaves. From the Golden Goblin's expression, the monsters that Wang Yu and the others had killed seemed to be his subordinates. The Golden Goblin let out an angry roar, hid his sword behind his shield with one hand, lowered his body, and charged straight at them. In the blink of an eye, the Golden Goblin had already rushed to Thousand Vermilion Violet's side. The slender long sword in its hand slashed through the air. An arc flashed, and Thousand Vermilion Violet was directly turned into white light. F***CK. This speed. Everyone saw that one person was suddenly missing from the team column on the upper right corner of the interface, and then they received the news that Thousand Vermilion Violet had been killed. They were all stunned. As a cleric, Thousand Vermilion Violet had always been at the back of the team, and the Golden Goblin had been at the front of the team. The two of them were at least 10 meters apart, and the distance of 10 meters was covered in a flash. His speed was almost as fast as teleportation. While everyone was still stunned, the Golden Goblin turned around and charged over again. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. His figure flashed 3 times, and Thousand Vermilion Violet and an assassin beside her were directly turned into white light. Tempest was beside Thousand Vermilion Violet, so he was naturally hit as well. As Tempest was a tank, he was not instantly killed, but his injuries were not light. He had lost more than half of his HP from being stabbed by the Golden Goblin, and his face was pale with fright. At the same time, the Golden Goblin swung his long sword, and 2 sword auras formed a cross that erupted from the blade, instantly killing the 2 assassins beside him. Wang Yu hurriedly shouted, "Everyone, don't panic. Quickly come to my side." Goblins and gnomes were the same. Both were monsters with agility. This Golden Goblin boss's agility wasn't low, and he also had a 4x movement speed increase. His speed was so fast that it wasn't something that players could match up to. If the Gale Battle team had other classes, it would be fine. For example, a circle of shield warriors could raise their shields to defend a cleric, and they wouldn't even need to move to be able to grind them to death. If it was a warlock, it would be even easier, as Dark Barrier could completely suppress the Golden Goblin. However, the Gale Battle team had a bunch of big squishy monsters, and this was practically giving the boss benefits. In the game, following the orders of experts was a tradition. At this time, the strongest person, Wang Yu, was naturally everyone's backbone. Hearing Wang Yu's orders, Tempest led the remaining members and moved as fast as he could to Wang Yu's side. Wang Yu protected Tempest and the others behind him, and then stared closely at the Golden Goblin's figure, watching its movements. The Golden Goblin cackled, and once again buried his head in his charge, charging towards the group's formation. In martial arts, there was a saying that speed was unbeatable. As a warrior, Wang Yu had trained his reflexes and eyesight from a young age. He remembered that when Wang Yu and his brother Wang Fei were training their eyesight, Wang Yu would hang a live fly and let them count how many times the fly flapped its wings. Wang Yu would always get the count wrong, and Wang Fei would always be praised. This puzzled Wang Yu, and when he asked, he found out that Wang Fei had specifically looked up the frequency of the fly's wings on the internet. Unlike Wang Fei, who was opportunistic, Wang Yu was stubborn. As Wang Yu grew older, he could finally see the frequency of the fly's wings clearly. Wang Yu then told him that he had actually looked it up on the internet. This made Wang Yu depressed for a long time. Even though he had been cheated since a young age, Wang Yu's astonishing eyesight and reflexes had been trained. In the eyes of Tempest and the others, the Golden Goblin was a golden illusion, but in Wang Yu's eyes, the Golden Goblin's figure was clear, and the direction of its movement was completely within his expectations. Here it is. At this moment, Wang Yu suddenly shouted. He extended his right fist forward, and his weapon abruptly transformed into a long staff. Just as everyone was wondering what was wrong with Wang Yu, they heard a dang sound. Wang Yu's long staff accurately hit the Golden Goblin's shield. Almost at the same time, the Golden Goblin's long sword stabbed out. Wang Yu was shocked when he saw this, and he spun the long staff in his hand, changing the direction of the Golden Goblin's longsword. Under the effect of inertia, the Golden Goblin's body involuntarily slanted, and the sword stabbed into the thigh of Tempest, who had been watching the spectacle beside Wang Yu. The low-health Tempest hadn't even finished his sentence when he turned into white light. To be continued. Chapter 295. The online game sociologist, Iron Ox, once said, "When you're low on health, don't stand at a dangerous place to watch the fun." The pitiful Tempest didn't recognize him, so he received his retribution. It wasn't like a cleric didn't have potions when he died, so why did he have to save money? Seeing the sword that was aimed at Wang Yu suddenly kill Tempest, the remaining members of the Gale battle team hurriedly took a few steps back. They looked at Wang Yu and the Golden Goblin with lingering fear, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. After stabbing Tempest to death, the Golden Goblin turned its gaze and raised its sword to stab at Wang Yu again. The Golden Goblin was short, and its sword moved in 3 different directions. Wang Yu hurriedly switched his weapon to the universe blade form to block the attacks. In terms of swordsmanship, 100 Golden Goblins wouldn't be a match for Wang Yu. However, the Golden Goblin was extremely fast, and it circled around Wang Yu. Wang Yu couldn't do anything about it. It couldn't be helped. This kind of fast boss was the biggest headache for Wang Yu. The Golden Goblin sword was a slender western sword, and it was mainly used to stab. It stabbed at Wang Yu's lower body like a storm. Wang Yu couldn't compare to the goblin in terms of movement speed. He could only stand in place and brandish his universe blade. The spectators couldn't even see their weapons and could only hear the dang, 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 dang sounds. If it wasn't for Wang Yu's fast attacks and exquisite swordsmanship, his lower body would have been pierced by the boss. "Can't you guys help me?" Wang Yu could only parry because there would be openings if he counterattacked. The Golden Goblin was too fast, and any openings would be taken advantage of. However, Wang Yu's parries were methodical, and it wasn't very strenuous. He even had the mood to talk to the others. F***CKME. Seeing that Wang Yu was fighting the boss alone and still had the chance to talk to them, the remaining 4 members of the Gale battle team worshipped Wang Yu. "They're too fast, I can't aim properly," Whirlwind Scattered Cloud said after aiming for a long time. There was a saying that mortals suffered when immortals fought. The duel between Wang Yu and the Golden Goblin was not loud, but the visual effect was extremely frightening. If there was even the slightest mistake, it would be a battle to the death. The assassins naturally did not dare to advance, and the only ones who could help were the 2 archers. However, the Golden Goblin's figure was only a shadow in the eyes of the 2. He didn't even have a target. If he shot randomly, he might hit someone. The boss's skill is about to end. "Let's wait for the boss to use its skill before shooting attribute arrows," Wang Yu said. Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone worshipped him again. When normal players fought a boss, they were most afraid of the boss's skill ending. However, from what this master said, he was actually hoping for the Golden Goblin to use its skill. The thinking of an expert was not something normal people could understand. Little did they know, in the eyes of a martial arts expert like Wang Yu, whether it was manual mode or system mode, the system boss's normal attacks were much harder to deal with than skills. This was especially true for a boss that relied on speed like the Golden Goblin. Even though there was no pattern to it, its absolute speed allowed it to perfectly link its attacks together, making it the most difficult to deal with. On the other hand, the moment when the boss used its skill and the stun after the skill was used were the boss's biggest openings. Finding openings to kill in one hit was a thought that had been instilled into Wang Yu since he was young. Even though in the game, bosses often had hundreds of thousands of HP, and it was impossible to kill them in one hit, finding openings to deal damage to the boss or to control the boss was still something Wang Yu could do. The Golden Goblin and Wang Yu exchanged blows for another round. Suddenly, it jumped back and lowered its head. Its body once again became a golden shadow and rushed at Wang Yu. Wang Yu's eyes tightened. He grabbed the heaven and earth blade and used it to block in front of him. With a clang, the golden goblin's attack missed. It turned around and moved behind Wang Yu. Wang Yu's scabbard was already behind his back. After a dull clang, Wang Yu suddenly turned around. The scabbard in his left hand and the blade in his right suddenly crossed in midair. Pah! The golden goblin's long sword was instantly blocked by Wang Yu. The golden goblin's triple slash was also forced to stop. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Wang Yu moved forward and flashed behind the golden goblin. He sheathed the heaven and earth blade and wrapped it around the golden goblin's neck. A sword draw instantly took away more than 10,000 HP from the golden goblin. At the same time, Wang Yu shouted, "Shoot him!" Before Wang Yu could finish her sentence, the arrows from Cyclone and Cloud had already arrived. They accurately hit the golden goblin's chest. A green light flashed, and the golden goblin was locked in place. Because the boss had resistance to control skills, the arrow that originally locked in place for 5 seconds only locked the golden goblin for 5 seconds. However, for Wang Yu, 5 seconds was enough. Wang Yu's weapon changed back in a fist form and grabbed the golden goblin's neck. Then he used Ferocious Tiger Strike and slammed it into the ground. The golden goblin was directly thrown to the ground. In the game, Grandmasters of Combat had two powerful control skills, Grab and Levitate. Levitate was easier to recover, and agility-based bosses had a high chance of recovering. So, Wang Yu did not side kick and levitate, but directly threw it to the ground. After a boss was knocked down, it was the hardest to recover. In Rebirth, there was no such thing as being knocked down. To create this effect, it completely depended on the player's control. Throwing the target however they wanted to was a difficult operation. Currently, only people like Wang Yu, who practice martial arts, could do it. The golden goblin's agility was indeed increased by 4 times. After it was thrown to the ground, it actually used its long sword to stand on the ground. Its legs straightened and it wanted to recover. Seeing this, Wang Yu used both of his hands to grab the golden goblin's legs. With a thunder stamp, he stepped on its thighs. Then, with a twist of his arms, he flipped it over and pressed down with force. The golden goblin was directly pressed into the yellow soil with its back facing the sky. "Stab him!" Wang Yu roared again. 2 assassins received the order and ran over. First, they used gouge on the back of the golden goblin's head. Then, they dragged their daggers and stabbed into the golden goblin's back. The golden goblin was hard to deal with because it was too fast. Unless it was a warlock's crowd control, it would be hard to control it. Now that it had fallen into Wang Yu's hands, it would be hard to escape the tiger's claws. The golden goblin's strength wasn't great. Under Wang Yu's control, it lay on the ground and continuously slapped the ground with its hands, but it couldn't do anything. It allowed everyone's attacks to land on its back. In Rebirth, backstabbing had a damage bonus. Assassin's bonus was even higher. So, being able to backstab was every assassin's dream. Today, their dream had come true. 300,000 HP wasn't a lot. Under Wang Yu's strong control, the 4 of them attacked the golden goblin's back freely. After a round of group attacks, the golden goblin's HP was finally emptied. Chapter 296. Reeks. It died just like that? Everyone still couldn't believe the fact that the golden goblin had been killed. After all, the golden goblin was a level 35 gold boss. A team of 20 to 30 people would have a hard time dealing with it. They didn't expect it to be stabbed to death so easily. Of course, this was mainly due to Wang Yu's control. The skill of locking was very high. If it was anyone else, it would be impossible to perfectly lock the golden goblin to the ground. With Wang Yu's control, they were able to turn this fast guy into a fixed target. If not, the others could only rely on luck to attack the golden goblin. "Nyoga, quick, loot it and see what it drops." Whirlwind and Clouds said anxiously. Everyone was risking their lives to kill the boss just for this moment. "Let me see." Wang Yu tilted his head and searched the golden goblin's body. He took out a slender golden sword. Raka's Western Sword Attack, 100100 mana, 808015 strength, 20 agility, weak point attack, passive skill. Normal attacks deal 30 critical hits. Nimble Dance, passive skill. Attack speed increased by 30. 7-star Shine, active skill. Attack the target 7 times at an extremely fast speed. Every attack deals 60 damage. Cost, 150. Cooldown, 50 seconds. Level requirement, 30. Profession requirement. Warrior item description. Swordsman Raka's personal sword. Light and easy to carry. It has an extremely fast attack speed. The 2 passive attributes of this sword were very average. They were common items that could be found everywhere. However, the active skills were quite overpowered. Physical attack classes generally did not have high damage bonuses. A single stab of the sword could deal 480 damage, which was definitely an explosive amount of damage. Especially the main attribute of this sword. It was actually maxed out. Everyone was stunned. In Rebirth, only equipment created by players would have maxed out values. The equipment dropped by bosses didn't have much damage. For example, the maximum physical damage of this golden one-handed sword was 100. The equipment dropped by a normal boss would have a maximum damage of less than 100. It was hard to find a boss as honest as the Golden Goblin. If none of us can use it, then we don't have to roll, right? Wang Yu asked everyone. Wang Yu was a person who knew what he was doing. He knew that without the help of these 4, even if he could kill the Golden Goblin, he would have to expend a lot of effort. Therefore, he couldn't take all the spoils for himself. In Nyogo, whatever you say, Whirlwind's scattered clouds nodded. If not for Wang Yu, the Gale Battle Squad would have perished at the entrance of the Immortal Trail Forest Village. They might not even have seen the Golden Goblins. It was already good enough that Wang Yu was in the mood to share the loot with them. As for how to split the loot, they had no say in terms of strength or contribution. Let's bid. The highest bidder wins. Wang Yu's words caused the 4 of them to spit out a mouthful of blood. Their evaluation of Wang Yu changed from honest and sincere to seeming honest and sincere, but was actually treacherous. Damn, this was an existence that had swept away an entire village's shops. Was it competing to see who was richer just nonsense? Nyogo, we're all poor people. You could just bid a price for this sword. Whirlwind Scattered Clouds was an honest person. He knew that he wasn't as rich as Wang Yu, so he didn't try to raise the price. How about 150 gold coins? Wang Yu asked. The first thing Wang Yu did was to show this sword to famous Sword Dao Xue, and famous Sword Dao Xue gave him such an estimate. Nowadays, there were more and more good equipment, and gold equipment was no longer as rare as it was in the past. Therefore, the price had also decreased. If it wasn't for the sword's full damage, it would only be worth 100 gold coins. All right, everyone nodded their heads in satisfaction. They had only helped to stab a few times, and they were able to obtain a reward of 30 gold coins. Where else could they find such a good deal? After keeping the one-handed sword, Wang Yu took out 120 gold coins and gave it to the 4 of them before continuing to loot the corpse. Raka's 4 Rising Shield Attack, 40-40 magic points, 20-20 physical defense, 60-60 magic resistance, 60-60 strength, 15 vitality, 20 stamina, 12,000 Racker's protection, passive skill, 525 HP, 250 per Racker's firmness, unique passive skill. When a melee or ranged hero receives a normal attack, there's a 70% chance of blocking 40 damage. Racker's Fury. When a user's HP falls below 35, the damage received is reduced by 20. Level requirement, 30 class requirement. Shield warrior item description. A godly weapon obtained by the swordsman Racker when he was young. When used together with Racker's rapier, it will trigger a special skill, parry counterattack. Parry counterattack, special skill. When the skill is activated, if the enemy's attack is successfully parried, the user will use a normal attack against the enemy. Once every 60 seconds. This 4-star shield was one of the best among the one-handed shields, especially the last parry counterattack. It was a typical turnaround skill. Just this skill alone increased the value of this equipment by 50. How about 200 gold coins? Wang Yu asked. Whatever you say. Everyone wiped their sweat. Wang Yu's price left them with no room to bargain. Then 200 gold coins it is. Wang Yu paid for the items and continued to loot the corpses. Swordsmanship essentials. Cross/, rare skill. Uses mana to activate 2 sword auras to attack the enemy. Class requirement. Rogue, warrior, knight. This skill book could obviously be used by any class with bladed equipment. Since there was a class requirement, Wang Yu did not hesitate to give this skill book to the 2 assassins. The last item was also a skill book. Swordsmanship essentials. Epic skill. Uses extreme speed and 3 sprints to deal a fatal attack to the enemy. Every attack on the same target will deal 150 additional damage. Item description. The signature skill of the swordsman Racker. Racker once used this skill to dominate the continent. To this day, no one has been able to break it. Class requirement. Warrior. Wang Yu scoffed at the skill book's description. No one has been able to break it because they haven't met me yet. I easily broke it just now. However, when Whirling Clouds and the others saw the skill book's description, they immediately cried out, This is an epic skill. What's wrong with an epic skill? Is it very powerful? Wang Yu asked in disdain. Wang Yu had never looked at the skills that he had broken before. Although the title of epic skill was very powerful, in Wang Yu's eyes, there was only one word that could describe this skill, and that was a so-so. Chapter 297. Genius 1 Second. Remember Net, providing you with exciting novels to read. Epic and legendary were the same. Any item with these 2 titles was unique, no matter if it was a skill or equipment. In other words, there was only one warrior skill book for triple slash. From its rarity, it could be seen how valuable this skill book was. Even Wang Yu had only seen one person with this skill, and that was Spring Source Summon Imp. It was said that it was a legendary skill. What made everyone puzzled was that this kind of top-notch skill book was a reward from a high-level quest chain. It actually dropped from a boss in this hidden dungeon. It could be seen just how high the drop rate of this dungeon was. How much does this skill cost? Wang Yu exclaimed and sent the triple slash to famous Blade Snow. Thinking about it carefully, this skill was not bad. The 3-part attack could attack 3 targets, and it could also attack 1 target. More importantly, this attack could move the target 3 times. In addition to the charge skill that warriors already had, it would be a 4-part movement. Even if Wang Yu wanted to move the target 4 times, she would need to rely on equipment and technique. 500. Famous Blade Snow replied without hesitation. At the same time, he asked curiously, What are you doing? You even got this kind of thing to raid a dragon's nest? The more he saw Wang Yu's strength, the less he doubted that there was anything Wang Yu wouldn't dare to do, including challenging the dragon's limits. I found a hidden skill book. Wang Yu said, Damn, did your family open this game? Famous Blade Snow was flabbergasted. The chances of finding a hidden dungeon was not much higher than finding an epic skill. Nonsense. Wang Yu closed the chat window and said, This skill book is 500 gold. Is everyone satisfied? Satisfied. Everyone hurriedly nodded. Rare skills were worth around 50 gold on the market. This epic skill book was priced at 500 gold, which was reasonable. After looting the equipment, Cyclone and the others really wanted to dismember the Golden Goblin's corpse and take it away, but they were stopped by Wang Yu. The goblin was a humanoid boss, after all. Profiting from the dead was already immoral enough. If they tortured the corpse, Wang Yu really couldn't accept it. Normally, there would be at least 3 bosses in an instance dungeon. Judging from the development of the map, the next boss should be the guardian of the Rock Giant King. Sure enough, the 5 of them continued forward, and before long, they arrived at the territory of the stone giants. Each of these big guys was more than 3 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in moss, and they rumbled as they walked. It was very frightening. Stone giant HP, 50,000 P. 0 skills. Smash, boulder, throw. The rock giant's attributes were as simple and violent as they looked. Although they only had 2 skills, they gave everyone an unprecedented pressure. There was no other reason. These guys' bodies were extremely hard, and normal attacks were not very effective against them. Wang Yu had it easier. If physical attacks were not enough, he could still use magic attacks. With Wang Yu's current skill damage, it was not difficult to destroy these big guys. The others had it a little difficult. Besides having high defense, the rock giant's attack range was very long. Boulder throw was not inferior to the range of an archer, and its attack was even more shocking. An archer had about 800 HP, and one attack could take away more than 700 HP. Fortunately, these things did not live in groups. There were a total of 30 in the entire area, and they were scattered in different positions. Otherwise, after a round of attacks, these big guys would have wiped out the team. Moreover, these guys moved very slowly. They were all agility professions. Although they were difficult to deal with, it was only a matter of time before they were killed. After 20 minutes, the team finally finished killing all 30 rock giants. As the final guardian monster of the Hidden Instance dungeon, the rock giant was much more stingy than the previous monsters. Besides dropping a pile of stones and materials for the construction guild, there was nothing else. It cannot be helped. They only had a few things on them. It was not like they could dig out swords and equipment from the stones. That was too unreliable. After killing 30 rock giants, the team obtained a pile of materials. With a tremor, the final boss, the King of Rock Giants, woke up. The King of Rock Giants was a full 5 meters tall. It looked like a pile of rocks, and on its irregular head, there was a crown. King of Rock Giants, Elite Rock HP, 100000P, 1000 skills, Mad Charge, Spinning Punch, Earth and Roar Monster Introduction. Originally a hill in the Celestial Trail Forest, it was possessed by the soul of an evil spirit and became the most terrifying existence in the Celestial Trail Forest. System notification: you have received the dungeon quest Plunder, rank A. Quest completed. Defeat the King of Rock Giants. Quest failed. Everyone was killed by the King of Rock Giants. Upon failure, all the dungeon items will be taken by the King of Rock Giants. The dungeon rank will increase by 1 rank, and 50 Elven City reputation. I knew there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Wang Yu was so depressed after seeing the quest that he wanted to vomit blood. When it came to shamelessness, the system was still the best. First, it dropped a bunch of gold and epic items. Then, it told the players that if they could not clear the dungeon, the previous drops would not count. This damn system was really shameless. Speaking of which, this quest is a bit of a scam. Wang Yu said gloomily. It's all right. The members of the Gale Battle team did not feel much about this quest. This was because this quest had very little impact on the members of the Gale Battle team. If they died or failed the quest, the only thing they would lose would be the throwing axes and javelins. At most, they would lose their cross/skill. As the biggest beneficiary of the dungeon, the items on Wang Yu's body were bought with a lot of money. The transactions between players were not counted as a gain from the system. With the character of the Gale Battle team, they would still return the money. However, would the system return the items bought in the village shop? This was a bit wishful thinking. Therefore, if the quest failed, the most unlucky person, Wang Yu, would suffer immeasurable losses. Foreigners, you have come to the wrong place. Just as Wang Yu was feeling depressed, the King of Rock Giants let out an angry roar and walked over with heavy steps. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. With every step he took, Wang Yu and the rest could feel the earth trembling. Step back. Seeing the King of Rock Giants approaching, Wang Yu and the others retreated. The Rock Giants looked cumbersome, but they could not stop its big strides. Everyone was an agility profession, and it was getting closer. Soon, the King of Rock Giants was not far away from them. Then, the King of Rock Giants suddenly leaned forward. Seeing this, Wang Yu shouted, "Quickly dodge! It is going to charge." Chapter 298. Recommended reading. Wang Yu had clearly overestimated those fellows from the Gale Battle team. The King of Rock Giants' movement speed was faster than everyone else's. Moreover, its body was as tall as a 2-story building, and its horizontal area was as big as a tank. At such a close distance, it suddenly accelerated and collided with the King of Rock Giants. It was obviously difficult to dodge. Whirlwind and clouds fared better as he was closer to Wang Yu. Wang Yu flashed to avoid the collision, and at the same time, he used his grasping cloud hand to pull whirlwind and clouds out. The others were not so lucky, as they were directly hit by the king of stone giants and turned into white light, their belongings falling to the ground. The king of rock giants was a boss in manual mode, so was quite intelligent. After killing 3 people, it immediately canceled its skill and leaned forward 45 degrees. It spread its arms and waved its huge fists. Like a windmill, it spun and rushed towards Wang Yu and windswept. When Wang Yu saw the king of rock giants attacking, he called out to Whirlwind, "Scatter clouds. I'll hold him back. You run far away." Windswept was scared out of his wits. Naturally, he did not dare to disobey Wang Yu's words. He turned around and ran without looking back. He only dared to look back when he could no longer hear the footsteps of the king of rock giants. Wang Yu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. He held the long staff in his hand and flew towards the king of rock giants horizontally. The king of rock giants was huge. Although its body was tilted, there was still a gap of half a meter below it. Although Wang Yu's body was huge, he was just able to pass through. Wang Yu moved behind the king of rock giants. He raised his hands and inserted the long staff in his hands into the gap between the king of rock giants' legs. The king of rock giants was spinning at this time. The difference in strength between the two was huge. Wang Yu naturally did not do this to make this big blockhead fall. The king of the rock giants turned its body, bringing with it the long staff in Wang Yu's hand. Wang Yu's entire body was thrown diagonally upwards. After the king of rock giants released its spinning heavy punch, its forelimbs slammed on the ground with a loud bang. The ground within a radius of 10 meters around the king of rock giants was directly cracked, and countless spiky stone pillars rose from the ground. Wang Yu, who was descending from the sky, saw the dense stone spikes on the ground that were more than a meter tall, and his heart was filled with fear. Fortunately, he had been flung away. Otherwise, if he had been struck by this move, even if he had the protection of his chi shield and survived, he would have been traumatized in the future. The despicable foreigner's skill had missed. The king of rock giants was slightly stunned. It turned around and ran in the direction where Wang Yu had fallen. In the blink of an eye, it was not far away from Wang Yu. At this time, Wang Yu had also landed, and the king of rock giants smashed a punch at him. Wang Yu rolled forward and went under the king of rock giants' crotch. He kicked the king of rock giants' ankle with a thunder step. At the same time, he knocked the long staff forward, and the control circle was opened. One end of the staff hit the king of rock giants' leg, and the other end hit the king of rock giants' crotch. The name of Wang Yu's 3 moves was called standing sweep, and it was a type of staff technique. Unfortunately, although the moves were extremely exquisite, the system did not recognize them at all, and the damage dealt to the king of rock giants was pitifully low. The king of rock giants roared, turned around, and punched again. Wang Yu rolled forward again and rushed to the front of the king of rock giants. He tilted the end of the staff up and hit the king of rock giants' crotch again. Wang Yu was speechless for a moment. Huaxia Kung Fu had always been about hitting the vital points to achieve the effect of killing someone in a second. Hitting the groin was a basic skill, but there was still some difference between the king of rock giants and real people. At least their vital points were not in a certain position. The king of rock giants did not lose much HP after being repeatedly hit in its shameful spots. However, it was repeatedly humiliated by the insignificant human being in its eyes, so there was no need to mention how angry it was. It roared, put its arms together, and swatted at Wang Yu. Wang Yu jumped back and dodged the king of rock giants' attack. He secretly broke out in a cold sweat. The control circle of the long staff depended on the length of the staff and the person. Unlike Angela, who had no hands or feet, the king of rock giants was quite large, and Wang Yu's staff could not connect to its limbs at all. Using a control circle here was nonsense. "Nyoga, how can I help?" At this time, wind-swept away clouds shouted from afar. "Live well," Wang Yu replied, and once again faced the king of rock giants. The king of rock giants bent down and smashed its fist down. Wang Yu stepped on the king of rock giant's arm and jumped onto its head. Then he used eagle stomp 3 times in a row and stomped on the back of the king of rock giant's head. 3 damage points appeared, and Wang Yu finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this big guy was not without weaknesses, but this weakness was a little hard to reach. Although the king of rock giant's attacks were slow, and there were many openings, this bastard was more than 5 meters tall. Wang Yu could only hit it a few times a minute with each jump. The priority of a grab skill was related to strength. For a guy like the king of rock giants, whose strength exceeded the limit, the grab skill had no effect at all, so Wang Yu could not throw the king of rock giants like he did the golden goblins. "Old Wind, come over here," Wang Yu shouted in the party channel. Go over." Wind swept away clouds was a little confused. Just now, when he asked if he needed help, it was just a formality. In a battle of this level, it would not make much difference whether he was there or not. "What can I do?" Wind swept away clouds could not help but ask. "Shoot its head," Wang Yu said while dodging the king of rock giant's attacks. Wind swept away clouds was a little flattered and asked hoarsely, "Is there a more reliable quest, like cheering, setting a trap, or something?" There was no other way. The level 40 Dark Old Boss was basically unbeatable for the current players. It was simply impossible for 2 people to defeat it. "Trap? You know how to set traps?" Wang Yu asked in surprise. "Yes, I did a quest and learned the Lurker's trap skill." As he said this, Wind swept away clouds sent a screenshot of the skill. "Trap. Create a trap that can trap the target for 3 seconds. Skill range, 50. "Damn you call this a trap?" Wang Yu was depressed. In his impression, the so-called traps were magic traps like the counterattack tiger. Wind swept away clouds trap only had a skill range of 50, and the king of rock giant's feet were almost a meter long. "Can't help it. It's just a basic trap. I haven't gotten familiar with it yet." Wind swept away, clouds shrugged. "All right, you better come over and shoot its head." "No way, Nyogo, I'll die." Wind swept away clouds said in shock. Wang Yu said loudly, "I'll pull it, don't worry. P.S. I really want to show off my love, but there's nothing to show off. Sigh, I'm really getting old." Chapter 299. Will this work? Windswept Cloud said in horror. One could not blame Windswept Cloud for being coward. Archers had always bullied creatures that ran slower than them. The king of rock giants was not very agile, but it was not slow. Moreover, low-level control skills were completely ineffective against it. It was the basic rule of archers to run when they saw this kind of boss. Moreover, the king of rock giants was an independent mode boss, so the aggro system was unpredictable. Besides, Windswept Cloud was the main damage output. Wang Yu was not a shield warrior, so he did not have any special aggro attracting skills. Even if it was a normal mode boss, the aggro would still be biased towards Windswept Cloud. Therefore, Wang Yu sent Wind Cloud Remnant to attack. In Wind Cloud Remnant's mind, this was no different from sending himself to his death. "What else?" Wang Yu asked. If the quest failed, all the rewards of this dungeon would be taken back, and Windswept Cloud would be killed by the king of rock giants. He would die anyway. It was only a matter of time. It was better to give it a try. At least he could save some card points if he died earlier. Okay. Windswept Cloud weighed the pros and cons for a while. He carried his bow on his back and shot an arrow. A green arrow hit the head of the king of rock giants. 1,775 inches order to maximize the damage output. Windswept Cloud deliberately used an exquisite attribute arrow with 1,010 damage. As the damage floated up, Wang Yu was delighted. It seemed that this quest's breakthrough point was that the boss was afraid of archers. No wonder the blacksmith shop in the village sold so many arrows instead of other equipment. The system's arrangement was indeed meticulous. Originally, the king of rock giants was already angry enough that it could not hit Wang Yu. Now that it was shot in the back of its head, it roared and was about to turn around to attack Windswept Cloud. Wang Yu rushed to the crotch of the king of rock giants, raised his staff, and stabbed it between the legs of the king of rock giants. In the 2 rounds of combat with the rock giant, Wang Yu had already realized that although the rock giant didn't have the weaknesses of a human, The system had given it the ability to think like a human. If it was poked at a certain part of its body, it would become extremely angry. In gaming terms, its aggro would increase. The King of Rock Giant's aggro was once again pulled back as the humiliation point was once again poked. Both of its fists carried the sound of the wind as it randomly smashed towards Wang Yu. In terms of attack speed, the King of Rock Giants was really slow. Wang Yu dodged left and right like he was taking a leisurely stroll. At the same time, he would poke the King of Rock Giant's crotch with his stick from time to time. His behavior was very wretched. The power of the King of Rock Giant's punches was amazing, but its speed was too slow. If it could hit the target, it would be an effect. If it couldn't, it would be a special effect. He really stopped him. Whirlwind Scatter Clouds looked at Wang Yu's silhouette in disbelief. He was so shocked that his jaw dropped to the ground. This was a level 40 Dark Gold boss they were talking about, yet a Grandmaster of Combat had pinned it down so easily. The Grandmaster of Combat hadn't even suffered any damage. Remnant Wind's view of the game had completely collapsed. This kind of operation is really amazing. Even a War God and Mage God are only at this level. No, although the War God and Mage God are gods, they are still human. This guy is simply not human. That was what Feng Wanyankin thought. What are you looking at? Hurry up and attack. While Wang Yu dodged the King of Rock Giant's attacks, he gave Remnant Wind's endless disdain for the onlooker's behavior. Whirlwind Scatter Clouds reacted and hurriedly raised his bow to shoot. The archer's attack frequency was still very high. Wang Yu moved and dodged, firmly holding the King of Rock Giants at the edge of Whirlwind Scattered Clouds' attack range, not allowing him to advance or retreat. Whirlwind Scatter Clouds only needed to stand still and attack. Whirlwind Scatter Clouds' technique was also quite good. Under the system mode, the archer's shooting accuracy was assisted. The King of Rock Giant's head was also a big target, so he was not afraid of missing. Almost every arrow could deal nearly 2,000 damage to the King of Rock Giants. After Whirlwind Scatter Clouds shot more than a dozen arrows, the King of Rock Giant CC was finished. It lowered its head and used charge on Wang Yu. Wang Yu lightly rolled and rolled behind the King of Rock Giants. The King of Rock Giants canceled its skill and turned around to use Spinning Heavy Punch. Wang Yu did the same and once again turned behind the King of Rock Giants. With a long stick, his whole body was thrown out. This time, Wang Yu deliberately lowered his center of gravity and flew further than the last time, but not as high as the last time. When Wang Yu passed by Whirlwind Scatter Clouds, he deliberately used Cloud Catcher to pull Whirlwind Scatter Clouds. As soon as Whirlwind Scatter Clouds was pulled away, the King of Rock Giants' Spinning Heavy Punch finished casting. As usual, it came with Earthen Roar. Countless thorns rose from the place where Whirlwind Scattered Clouds stood. F***CK. Whirlwind Scattered Clouds was shocked when he saw this. He cursed and drew his bow. His hands were like a machine gun, pouring arrows on the King of Rock Giant's head. Wang Yu, who was beside Whirlwind Scattered Clouds, had very sensitive ears. He heard Whirlwind Scattered Clouds mumbling something that was not the name of the skill, nor was it cursing. It was very strange. The curious Wang Yu listened attentively for a few seconds before he could clearly hear that Whirlwind Scattered Clouds was muttering, 2.5, 2.5. Wang Yu then realized that Whirlwind Scattered Clouds was not shooting arrows. It was simply money. No wonder this kid's face was full of hatred. After a moment of hesitation, the King of Rock Giants had already gotten up and ran toward the two of them. Whirlwind Scattered Clouds' face changed. Wang Yu had already rushed out with his stick, and once again, he was entangled with the King of Rock Giants. Just as the thief class dreamed of backstabbing, all archers dreamed of one day being able to stand still and attack freely. With the help of Wang Yu, Whirlwind Scattered Clouds was lucky enough to experience the thrill of being canon. The King of Rock Giants was not a proper humanoid creature NPC. It could not even be considered creature. Its brain was also full of rocks, and its IQ was set to be higher than the system mode bosses. Wang Yu and Whirlwind Scattered Clouds quickly figured out the King of Rock Giants' routine. One tanked the monster, and the other dealt damage. Their coordination was perfect. When the King of Rock Giant's skill was about to end, Wang Yu dodged it, and whirlwind scattered clouds automatically retreated. After the skill was released, one tanked the monster, and the other dealt damage. Such coordination was flawless, and whirlwind scattered clouds was getting more and more comfortable. After all, there was Wang Yu tanking the monster, and his task was only to deal damage and retreat. If he did not do this well, he would not be a professional team. In the end, I am just a rock. The King of Rock Giants had 1 million HP, but it did not last long under the cooperation of the two. In less than 20 minutes, the King of Rock Giants' HP was emptied, and with a sad cry, it turned into a pile of rocks. A sky-blue heart, the size of a head, burst out of the King of Rock Giant's body. System notification. You have completed the dungeon quest Plunderer, rewarded with 1 special item. System notification. You have completed the hidden quest Goblin Chief's request. Please return to the village to receive the reward. Chapter 300. Ignoring the string of notifications, Wang Yu walked over and picked up the King of Rock Giant's heart. The King of Rock Giant's heart was dropped directly, which meant that players had no chance of looting it. As a gatekeeper boss, the King of Rock Giant's HP was really low. Windstorm seemed to have also received a reward from the system. He asked Wang Yu excitedly, "Nyoga, what did you get?" "This." Wang Yu rummaged through his bag and took out a book. Smelting, a long-lost alchemy skill of the goblins. Profession requirement, blacksmith, apothecary, a profession skill. "Nyoga, you're really unlucky," Windstorm said sympathetically. Wang Yu smiled and threw the smelting book back into his bag. He asked Windstorm, "What did you get?" "Weapon." Tornado Cloud Remnant chuckled and took out an extraordinarily luxurious longbow. Rainbow Feathers Downfall Attack. 120 mana. 80 agility. 20 strength. 15 flying feather. Arrow speed increased by 60 rainbow. Attack speed increased by 30 heart-piercing arrow. Active skill. Powerful penetrating power. Can pierce through enemies and deal 100 critical damage. Consumption, 100. Cooldown, 30 seconds. Meteor Arrow, active skill. Consumption, 5 arrows. Deals AoE damage in a designated area. Profession requirement. Marksman level requirement. 30. Item introduction. A peerless treasure given to the goblins by Elven Queen Alice. F*CK. Wang Yu was immediately depressed when he saw Windstorm's equipment. It was an exquisite dark gold equipment. Flying Feather was an archer's most indispensable skill because archers had a long range. Arrow speed was the most important attribute. Increasing it by 60 could greatly increase a player's hit rate and attack frequency. What made Wang Yu even more envious was that this equipment had 2 active skills. At this stage of the game, most equipment only had 1 active skill. This equipment could be called a godly equipment. He had been jumping up and down for so long, and in the end, he had been given a skill book for his subclass. Whirlwind was just a bystander, but he had been given such a godly item. Even with Wang Yu's state of mind, he felt a little unbalanced. "I can't accept this," Wang Yu said gloomily. "Haha, this is called character." Whirlwind scattered clouds laughed proudly. He picked up the trash that the others had dropped and said, "Nyoga, I'm leaving the dungeon. They're waiting for me. Let's go, let's go." Wang Yu waved his hand gloomily and walked back in the direction he had come from. Unlike Whirlwind, Wang Yu wasn't in a hurry to return the dungeon. He still had other rewards from the village chief. When he returned to the gnome village, Wang Yu was treated like a hero. The villagers who had ignored Wang Yu before had miraculously gotten to know Wang Yu. When they saw Wang Yu enter the village, they surrounded him and called him a warrior. They were very passionate. Wang Yu wiped his sweat and squeezed through the crowd, arriving in front of the gnome village chief, Karoni. "Respected warrior, thank you very much for getting rid of a huge threat for our village." The gnome village chief, Karoni, said respectfully. Wang Yu said calmly, "It was nothing." The gnome village chief said, "Warrior, you've saved our gnome race. I really don't know how to repay you. Just take the best stuff. You're not going to renege on your debt, are you? Wang had been cheated by NPCs many times and knew how thick-skinned these NPCs were. Compared to Wuji, if you dared to be courteous and didn't ask for their rewards, they would really get away with it. As if Wang Yu had hit the nail on the head, Karoni's expression changed slightly. He then laughed and said, "How could that be, Lord Warrior? Our gnome race is an ancient race. Talking about that history is..." Karoni didn't mention anything about the rewards. Instead, he started to nag and introduced the history of the gnome race to Wang Yu. The history of the gnomes is very simple. It's nothing more than us gnomes being very powerful. Our ancestors were also very powerful. There are many good things, especially the combination of alchemy and engineering. It's unparalleled in the world. I don't know what you like about it." After saying that, Karoni stretched out his hand and took out a pile of items. There were crafting books, magic equipment, and many special tools. There was a dazzling lineup, and Wang Yu couldn't take it all in. "Lord Warrior, as long as you need it, we have it here. If we don't have it, I can think of something for you," Karoni said proudly. "Do you have advanced engineering?" Wang Yu asked Karoni. Wang Yu's equipment was the best in the game. It was much better than Karoni's equipment. There were also tools that could only be used once. Naturally, Wang Yu wasn't interested in them. Thus, Wang Yu turned his attention to the skill books. "Yes, but this is the ultimate reward. You can only learn it after you reach level 150. Do you really want to learn it?" Karoni asked. Level 150? Wang Yu was speechless. Currently, Wang Yu had been leveling up for more than 2 weeks, even though she was only level 20. Who knew how long it would take for her to reach level 150? The game might even shut down by then. As the saying goes, a bird in the hand is better than 100 in the bush. Wang Yu immediately turned his attention to the other rewards. "About this, I want to make firing pins," Wang Yu said to Karoni after looking at his skill bar. Wang Yu's engineering was only at the elementary level, so the number of crafting books he could learn was limited. The skill books that Karoni had put out were all about mechanical tools and didn't have any practical uses. Thus, Wang Yu thought of the crafting book that he was missing. Wang Yu had already obtained the crafting book for rifling and ammunition clips. If he obtained the goblin's firing pins, he would be able to make a top-tier weapon. Firing pins. Karoni was shocked when he heard that, and his face revealed a troubled expression. "What? Is there a problem?" Wang Yu asked, a little annoyed. Did he have to come up with some trash to fool him after saving the goblins? The goblin's stingy reputation was well-deserved. That's right. In Wang Yu's eyes, none of the things that Karoni had put out caught his eye. Anything that Karoni didn't like was considered trash by Wang Yu. No. Karoni shook his head in panic. He took out a tattered book and handed it to Wang Yu. At the same time, he said gloomily, "I didn't think that someone would know about the greatest invention that our goblin race has ever lost. Firing pin blueprint. Rare blueprint. Usage requirement. Elementary engineering. There are a lot of things that you can't imagine." Wang Yu smiled in satisfaction and learned the firing pin making skill. After learning the firing pin making skill, Wang Yu received a quest completion notification. System notification. You have completed the hidden quest, Lost Civilization. You have obtained the special crafting skill, Magic Gun Crafting. Wang Yu opened his skill bar and saw that the ammunition clip making, rifling making, and assembling pins had disappeared. In their place was Magic Gun Crafting. Magic Gun Crafting, the lost civilization of the goblins. A lost crafting skill that can be used to craft magic weapons. Ammunition clip making, 11 rifling making, 01 firing pin making, 01 insufficient parts, unable to complete assembling. Interesting. Wang Yu was slightly surprised. He then casually used the smelting skill in his bag. Chapter 301. Genius 1 Second Remember Net, providing you with exciting novels to read. Assimilable skills. Wang Yu is no stranger to the term assimilation. He knew that assimilation was a special effect that only advanced skills could have. He had not expected that the refining and smelting skills he had learned were both advanced skills. The effects of assimilation were shocking. After Chun Xiang's summoned imps assimilated summoned skeletons into summoned demons, the skill's effects nearly doubled. It was clear how powerful assimilation was. Assimilate. Wang Yu clicked confirm without hesitation. System notice. Subclass skill you have learned. Intermediate magic refining. Intermediate magic refining. A combination of the refining and smelting skills. Has a high chance of forging top-tier equipment. Apart from the basic forging skills forge, intermediate magic refining also had two other control buttons. Smelting can smelt equipment of the same rank. Recast resets the equipment's attributes. Can also restore unusable items to their former glory. What a ridiculous skill. When Wang Yu saw the magic refining skill, he was so shocked that he could not even close his mouth. The Grandmaster forging skill only had a 60% chance of forging top-tier equipment, while the intermediate magic refining skill had an extremely high chance. According to the system's probability, it should be above 70%. Wang Yu, who had forged equipment before, immediately realized that the intermediate magic refining skill definitely had more assistance in the forging process. It could guarantee a forging completion rate that was infinitely close to 100%. Currently, Wang Yu did not know what the smelting skill was. However, from the name, it was a skill that combined two pieces of equipment into one, retaining the best attributes. Wang Yu's boxing gloves possessed the Devour skill. If he could smelt other equipment, it was very likely that the gloves would devour the forms of other weapons, allowing it to evolve. This was clearly the skill that excited Wang Yu the most. After all, for a martial arts expert who was proficient in all kinds of equipment, having a sufficient number of weapon forms would allow him to display his skills to the fullest. As for the recast attribute, it was what surprised Wang Yu the most. It was common knowledge that equipment obtained from monsters or quests had high attributes, but compared to equipment forged by players of the same rank, it was far inferior. This was because only players with forging skills had a chance of forging equipment with full attributes. However, although players' forging skills were powerful, there were limitations. Even Grandmaster forging skills could not forge equipment of dark gold or higher. As such, no matter how amazing the equipment forged by players was, it was still inferior to the epic or legendary equipment produced by the system. The recast function allowed players to reforge equipment. Not just dark gold equipment, but even epic and legendary artifacts could be reforged. The most overpowered part of the recast option was the last part of the description. It could allow unusable special equipment to regain its former glory. In other words, the fake high-end equipment that Wang Yu snatched from the boss could be reused after being recast. Thinking of this, Wang Yu could no longer suppress his excitement. He took a screenshot of the skill and sent it to the Chuanjin Sex channel. After a while, Chun Long, first, he skill after a long time, there was a reply in the channel. F***CK. Uncle Nyo, I heard from Dao Shua that Gamer G is your father. Is that true? To place one's pride exclaimed. Silly child, don't listen to that idiot's nonsense. Just tell me how's the skill? Awesome, it's indescribably awesome. Everyone praised. Such a shameless skill coupled with a hoodlum like Wang Yu, who could steal other people's equipment, was a perfect match. In the future, if he wanted something good, he could just reach out and grab it. Mingdu even added, remember to recast all my equipment when you come back. This guy always found Wang Yu's value the fastest. Sure, no problem. Wang Yu agreed happily. Good skills were usually used to show off, and the other half was used to benefit oneself and friends. Wang Yu understood this principle. I also want to recast Uncle Nyo. My equipment is too trashy. Brother Iron Ox, I also want to try recasting. Take a look, my shoes are still trashy silver equipment. Trashy silver equipment? These guys really didn't know the hunger of a hungry man. Silver equipment was still considered high-end at the moment, but in their eyes, it was trash. Anyway, seeing that Wang Yu agreed so readily, the animals in Chuanjin all said that their equipment was trash, and only after being reforged by Wang Yu could it be called the best. With everyone's flattery, Wang Yu became complacent and agreed to all their requests. In the end, Wang Yu, who had been silent, suddenly asked, You idiots, don't be too happy. Speaking of recasting, you need a lot of materials, right? Materials. Hearing Wuji's words, Wang Yu's heart skipped a beat. He quickly took off the ring in his hand and threw it into the recast interface. Recast. Martial Scholar's Glory Equipment. Ring rank. Legendary repair. 10 materials required for complete recast. 50 star iron. 28 adamantine. 60 mithril. 10 meteorite. The long list of material requirements made Wang Yu's head hurt. Adamantine and mithril were rare materials and expensive. Star iron was a special mineral that had a price, but no supply. As for meteorite and the other materials, most of them were unheard of. Damn it! Seeing the huge list of material requirements, Wang Yu wanted to cry, but had no tears. He thought that he had picked up a godly skill, but who knew that the requirements were so harsh? Mother Asterisk King System. Wang Yu cursed in the channel. What's wrong? Everyone asked hurriedly. Wang Yu threw the screenshot of the materials into the channel and said coldly, if anyone wants to recast equipment, you better prepare the materials yourself. Damn. Seeing Wang Yu's screenshot, everyone lost interest. Damn it, with so many precious materials, how many top-tier equipment could they buy? Wuji laughed and said, Old cow, don't be discouraged. This skill is obviously a godly skill in the later stages of the game. Of course you feel that it's not worth it now, but in the later stages when the materials are more abundant, you won't feel that it's worth it anymore. However, with so many equipment on you, there should be one that can be recast, right? That's right, this option can also recast equipment that cannot be used. Hearing Wuji's words, Wang Yu really remembered that there was a weapon in his bag that met the requirements. It was the attributeless gold-grade firearm that he snatched from Yoda. Thus, Wang Yu happily took out the firearm from his bag and threw it into the recast interface. Recast. Yoda's magic firearm equipment. Offhand weapon rank. Gold repair. 0 materials required for complete recast. 1 magic magazine. 1 magic rifling. 1 magic firing pin. System notification. Insufficient parts. Temporarily unable to complete assembly. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.